I just started the recording. Okay. Okay. So since this is the first class, last class was just a demo class. I mean, demo as in was just walking you through all the aspects and everything. So from today, from today's class, I'll be taking you through entire detailed what is the application security related not application security, network security related topics and everything. Okay. So first is we will be just discussing about ports and how to enumerate ports and what are dangerous ports and what is basic, SSLs and everything. Yeah. So when we start network security, there are different phases in network security. Okay. So client may provide you IP addresses or client may ask you to do an assessment of his network. Okay. That network may contain firewalls, switches, routers, hubs. It may be network devices. It may be, servers. It could be endpoints, whatever it is. Your desktops. It could be anything. So while we are doing an assessment, there is a methodology which we need to generally follow, so that it is not really necessary to follow that particular methodology, but then it will give us a very good result at the end, because everything will be sorted at the end. If you just don't follow the methodology, then what happens is everything will get messed at the end, and it will be really difficult when you're doing a large engagement. Okay. Let's say an engagement of 500 IP addresses or 1000 IP addresses, you're doing an assessment. So the general methodology of network security is, first you do an discovery scan. Okay. So in discovery phase, you're basically just going to figure out what kind of IP address are there, what kind of operating system it is using, and that's it. Yeah. So we'll be utilizing one of our open source tool called Nmap, and I'll be showing you a couple of profiles. And at the end, I'll give you a very detailed Nessus book, which will take you through entirely from an GUI perspective and from a command line perspective, and different type of commands as well. So I'll explain you in this class as well what are different type of commands. And after that, for practice, I'll provide you few IP addresses which you can utilize, and you can start scanning and practice on your own. Okay. So first is to perform a discovery scan. So basically, discovery scan and enumeration scan are, in first phase only. We will be doing in first phase. So when we talk about discovery scan, let's say you get an IP address. It is your, you need to figure out what kind of operating system is in use, what kind of appliance it is actually. Let's say client will just give you an IP address. Sometimes he may not provide you any kind of details. Let's say if there is a black box PT you're going to do, or black box VA you're going to do, so you're not going to get any kind of information. So now you're going to perform an enumeration scan, figure out what kind of box that is, and get to a conclusion. And then apart from that, it is really important to figure out what kind of services are running on it. Yeah, because some kind of services could be really dangerous, and attacker can utilize those kind of services and get into your get into the system. Or sometimes what happens is few dangerous services are running, like let's say FTP on plain text protocol. So it is really easy for an attacker to sniff the credentials of plain text protocol. But if that FTP is running on some, let's say SFTP, then it is really difficult to sniff the data. The reason is because everything will be encrypted right from the user's machine. So we'll discuss about that as well, how exactly it works. So first phase is to do an enumeration scan or discovery phase. In this, as I told you earlier, we are just going to figure out the port. So I hope everyone is aware that the port range is between 65,535, right? So out of this, 1023 are known as well-known ports, and after 1024 to somewhere around 40,000, I don't really remember the exact range, is unregistered ports, which is registered by big organizations such as Microsoft, Google, Yahoo for their services. And after that, a general port. So it is not mandatory that you need to run your services on this well-known ports or registered ports or something. You can manually configure. But yes, it is de facto ports which are used across services. Let's say there is a web application you're installing on Tomcat. By default, initially in development environment, it works on 80808 or 8443. And if it is on production, so you generally move it to port number 80 or 443. But it is not really necessary to run those on 80 or 443. If you want to manually configure, you can configure it to 60,000 as well, or 65,000. It really depends on you. Okay, so we are going to figure out what kind of ports are open, what kind of services are running, basically using couple of scans done using Nmap. Yeah. So 121023, the few very common ports are port number 80, which is a general HTTP port, so everyone is aware of that. Port number 443, which is an SSL of HTTP. So basically everything will be encrypted once it leaves the browser. So basic concept behind SSL is that there are two types of encryptions, asymmetric and symmetric, that I use. So most widely used in SSL is basically asymmetric. There will be a public key, private key. So public key will be with the user, that's basically us, and there will be a private key that will be stored on the server. So that public key which is stored on our browser using that SSL, it will generate a private key, and using that particular private key, it will encrypt the entire data and it will send all the way to server. The server will basically decrypt using, its root key or a private key, and it will basically decrypt the entire data at the server side. Okay, so whenever there is an SSL that comes in picture, this particular entire mechanism happens. If it is in plain text protocol, let's say if it is a port number 80, there will be nothing that is encrypted when it is when it is leaving your browser. Attacker can easily snip if you have entered usernames, password. It can be easily snipped. Okay, so if you want to explore in that area, you can use a tool called Enable. Okay, so this will basically snip at an entire network level. You may be aware about tool called Wireshark. So Wireshark is specifically for your own host. That is, whatever data is originating from your host or received on your host can be sniffed using Wireshark. But if you want to sniff at an entire network level, but just ensure that if you're doing at your home network or any other network, don't sniff or don't poison more than 10 to 15 minutes. Okay, because it will basically generate an promiscuous mode, and so entire data that is going to router will also be captured on Enable, and there will be a huge amount of data or huge amount of basically data that will be generated on your router. So there are very high chances that you may need to restart your router, or it will basically deny the services to all other users. Okay, so if you want to just explore, you can quickly install this. Make sure that you disable the antivirus, or else it will not allow you to install. Yeah, and just you can delete it. It's a very good tool. It will capture everything right from the Wi-Fi keys to everything. If there is any plain text protocol that is in use, then everything will be captured using this particular tool. Okay, so then the most common port you can remember is 21. 21 is again for FTP. It's an plain text protocol. So again, there is an alternative to 21 is 22 port number SFTP, and it is also used as an SSH basically. So SSH is secured shell. Whenever you want to remotely log in into remote Linux boxes, you use a 2022. So there is a 23 again telnet, which is again a plain text protocol. So any protocol which is plain text is generally considered as a dangerous service, since it transmits everything in clear text. Okay, and it is necessary and it is important to ensure that if there is any sensitive data that is transferred over any of the services, has to be on SSL at least. Okay, so other most commonly used ports are like 445, which is an SMB shared services. So in corporate networks, you may have you may access any shared drives basically. It works on 445. Again, it is considered as a dangerous until and unless it is not protected properly. Yeah, if there is no authentication required to access any of the drives on your network, then you can basically you can basically access any one C drive, D drive, whatever drives are there on that particular machine, right? So the is again 161. So this is basically SNMP. So this is another network level protocol. So there, even if there is an SNMP open, then you can do couple of attacks. You can see if the community string is public or private. So private is something which they have assigned. If the string is public, then you can basically dump the entire configuration of that particular network device. Okay, so we'll look into that, how to mostly all these things will be done by Nessus, but yes, it is very important to have this knowledge on your, this knowledge when you are starting with the network security assessment. Okay, so I hope, if you guys have any kind of doubt, just stop me then and there itself, or you can even type in the chat if you don't really want to tell anything. I'll answer it. Okay, so don't worry. Yeah. So as I told you earlier, in today's class, we'll be basically covering most of a discovery scan. Okay, so in discovery scan or enumeration scan, basically first thing you will require is an IP address. Yeah, so we will pick couple of IP address over the internet and we'll try to scan those. Okay, don't worry. So once you perform, once you perform a scan, you get a few port numbers open, or few, you can either, you get either services. You'll get a knowledge what kind of services are running. The reason behind doing this is because you may have a scenario where you're not supposed to, where you are not allowed to do any, allowed to use any kind of tool. In that scenario, if you are provided with IP address, you just can't do any kind of assessment without knowing what kind of services are running, right? So for that reason, this is a very basic and common step, where we do an enumeration scan. We figure out what kind of ports are open and all. Okay. So for this, we are going to utilize a tool called Nmap, which is an open source again, and it is an industry standard tool. Almost every organization uses Nmap. So it's a pretty straightforward tool. If you're using Mac, you'll get an. So you just need to go to this Nmap download page. I'll share the URL with you folks. So if you're using Windows, you can directly download this executable file and install it quickly. And if you're using Mac or Linux, if anyone is on Linux, then you can find the RPM files as well, and the DMG file as well. Okay, so once you download, you can quickly install this, and it will hardly take 2 minutes. And there are, while you're installing, by default it installs two different type of interfaces. One is GUI and another is command line. So for now, in order to make it very simple and straightforward, because by default it comes with GUI and CLI, so it is not really necessary that you need to know command line and you need to remember all the commands. But yes, it is always good to remember all the commands. But for now, since we are starting, I'll just go ahead with the GUI part. Okay, so you just, once you launch the Nmap GUI, so that's basically called ZenMap. You will have few tabs over here: target, profile, command, and everything. So in target, you're basically going to provide the IP address. Okay, the IP address could be one single IP address. You can provide multiple IP address, or you can provide the entire range itself. Okay, so when we talk about range, something like 0/24, so it is going to scan all the 255 IP address. Sometimes you may have something like 0/16. So you need to calculate a subnet. I hope everyone is aware about that, calculating a subnet. So what happens is, if in a data center there could be n number of servers, so that could have a certain range. So once you get that particular range, sometimes your client may provide this range. So this doesn't mean only 0 to 255 host. It could be mix of couple of subnets and more than 200 to 300 hosts. So you can just go to Google and you'll find an subnet calculator. So it is called subnet calculator. So this is a very good one. You just need to provide this particular the IP address right from, let's say you're starting it from 5. And it is something like 16, and just calculate. So it will give you, if you see here, it starts from 0 to 5 and it ends until 168.0.0.16. So it ends until 255 dot. So right from 0 to 255. That means almost everything, and so almost all the IP address are covered in this from 0 to 255. So you can utilize this to calculate it quickly, and it's a bit difficult. It's a bit hectic to do it manually. So that's the reason we quickly use the online tools available. Yeah. So once you get that particular information, you just need to use your Nmap and start scanning it. Okay. So let's say I take couple of, let me just take any one of IP address. So let's say I'm doing scan of this particular application. Yeah. So you can just get it quickly. You can get an IP address of that quickly using ping. And once you get an IP address, you just need to provide a target. So yes, this is very important. You need to know about the profiles. Okay. So in quick scan, there are 3 important profiles you need to know: quick scan plus, and intent scan all ports. Okay, so these are these are 3 commonly used ones. And there is another ping scan as well. That's an interesting one, although it's the usage is very basic and very straightforward, but it comes very handy in many a times. Let's say you're doing an assessment of 500 IP address, and out of the there may be chances that out of 500, at least 10 to 15 are down. Yeah, so in that case, what you can basically do is you can just quickly verify which IP address are down and which IP address are up. You can quickly do an ping scan, provide entire range or list of IP address over here, and just provide, select the ping scan over here. It will just ping. It's not going to do any kind of scanning or anything. It will just reach that host and see if the host is up or not. Yeah. So you get a result that if the host is up or not. Let's say you're doing a ping scan of all the 255 IP addresses. In that case, you can quickly just provide 0/24 and it is going to scan all the 255 IP addresses. Okay. So ping scan, it comes very handy at times when you have large number of IP addresses and you want to figure out what IP addresses are up and down. Okay. So quick scan is basically just going to figure out well-known ports, and that too out of well-known ports, it hardly scans 100 very commonly used ports. Okay, not even 121024. It does not even scan all the ports. It scans very commonly used ports between 121024. Okay, so it just scans port, it just gives you a port number. Okay, and it tells you the service number roughly, service name roughly. It does not give you what version of service is using, what is that particular service name actually and all. Okay, so for that reason we use quick scan plus. It is just an additional one, quick scan plus. So I would highly recommend you to go for quick scan plus if you just want to perform a well-known port scan and then go ahead with the detailed thorough scan. So in quick scan plus, basically when we provide an IP address, it does, if you say this is an ping scan, and out of 256, all the IP addresses are up, no, sorry, 120 hosts are up. That means almost 135 or 136 hosts are down, right? So I just got a rough idea about this. So that's good. You can, as I told you earlier, if you have multiple IP addresses, you can just separate it by comma and provide it. And using command line, I'll give you the commands at the end of this class. You can just go to your command line and use the same commands like nmap. You can use this particular same command like nmap-sn and just provide an IP address 173.236.19. Let's say 100. So it quickly checks whether the IP address is up or not. Okay, by default it will install the command line as well. So at the end of this class, I'll provide you commands. If let's say you have an IP address in a text file, you can feed that particular IP address. That particular text file directly into your command prompt and start doing assessment instead of providing everything after separated with comma. Okay, so you can do that quickly. Yeah, so quick scan plus. So as I told you earlier, quick scan just does very rough. It does a scan very similar to quick scan plus. The only difference is that in quick scan plus you will get the detailed details of that particular service as well. Okay, in quick scan plus you will get a port number open along with the service name, but in quick scan plus, along with the port number, service name, and the details about that particular service as well. Okay, so let me do one thing. Let's say I just pick one of an IP address over here. I'm just picking quickly this particular IP address and I do a quick scan plus. So in quick scan plus, this is the command from that -s capital V verbo scan and -o, and it just doesn't light version scan. So it's not going to thoroughly probe all the ports between 1 to 65,535. If you want to probe all the ports, that is between 1 to 65,535, you're going to utilize a scan called intent scan all TCP ports. Okay, so I hope everyone understands basic difference between TCP and UDP. It's a very important thing to know. So basically TCP is known as a connection oriented and UDP is known as a connection less protocol. So basically in connection oriented, what happens is there is a three-way handshake protocol always comes in picture. Like there will be an acknowledgement sent once the packet is received successfully at another end. If there is any loss of data, then that particular checksum will be sent to the source again, and source will try to send the same data again to the destination. So the TCP is a very relied network. That's a very common, well-known fact, because the loss of data is very less in that particular scenario. All and UDP is basically a connection less. Connection less. It does not mean that it is a Wi-Fi or GPRS or something. It's basically the acknowledgement is not sent back to the source, because if there is a packet loss, then that's lost. That's it. You need to again recall from your side for that particular loss, because a server or the source who is sending the data will never come to know that data has reached successfully or not. Sometimes what happens is there is a congestion in the network. Because of that, the collisions happen and the packet is lost. In TCP, there will be what do you say, basically there will be a checksum that will verify if the packets are reached successfully or not, and in UDP that does not happen. So that's a very basic thing you need to keep in mind. You don't need to really go into very in depth of TCPs, UDPs, because that's not something what we'll be doing. But yeah, you need to keep that in mind. So if you see here in this particular case, it has scanned, when I do quick scan plus, it found almost around 10 to 12 different type of ports that are open, and these, so 21 ports. So it tells an FTP. If you I was doing a general quick scan plus, it would have just told me an FTP. But now I got, and the FTP's flavor is basically pure FTPD. So that's what I use. So basically, as in vulnerability research, we just quickly go. I mean, generally what an attacker does is quickly goes to Google and search if there is any exploit available for that or not, and he will try to see if that particular exploit I can use it on this particular IP address or not. So there is a Metasploit module available, which we will learn at the end of this course. Don't worry. I mean, how to use different type of Metasploit modules and how to exploit those as well. Yeah. So for now, just keep it simple. So it gives you, if you go to this particular page, it will even give you what are different options you need to configure. But sometimes there are extra options as well, because you need to sometimes set a payload for that. Only using an exploit won't really work, or won't really execute the entire exploit. It will just verify if the vulnerability there is there or not. But in order, if you want to compromise the victim machine, that's basically you need to have a payload. Payload will basically give you a back connection, and you can start interacting with the shell or whatever it is. Okay, so there is a vulnerability for that, there's an exploit for that, and you can basically start exploiting it. So that's fine. There is an 22 port open, 25 open, so that's basically SMTP is open. Then there is a domain names, port number 80 is open, and in that Apache HTTPD there is a PHP 5.4.45 is in use. So 443 is also open. So now I got a rough idea that it is a web application server. Okay. So after doing an enumeration scan, you will come to know whether it is a firewall, whether it is a network, whether it is a different type of network device. Because let's say if there is an RSTP port open, so it is something on 135. I don't really remember the port number. Just telling you RSTP port open. So that's basically real-time streaming port. Okay, so real-time streaming comes in picture whenever there is a network, whenever there is a CCTV that comes in picture. So CCTV nowadays is called as something like IoT. So IoT is Internet of Things. Yeah. So you get to know what kind of device is running after doing an enumeration scan. Okay, so in enumeration scan, as I told you earlier, quick scan plus is one. You're going to utilize. Another is intense scan with all TCP ports. So basically it will take some time. So this took hardly not even 5 minutes. It took hardly 2 to 3 minutes to do an entire scan. But when it comes to all TCP ports, it is going to do almost, it is going to take almost I mean five odd minutes, because it is going to scan all the ports. So basically on all ports, it will try to connect and see if the port is open or closed. So right from 1 to 65,135. Okay. So I hope everyone is aware of three-way handshake protocol as well. So basically in three-way handshake protocol, what happens is there will be a connection that will be initiated from our end. Server will receive and request. So we will send an acknowledgement that boss, I am ready to transfer the data, and my client also will send an acknowledgement that yes, I am also ready. Both will start transferring the data. So basic, if you want to just observe where exactly you can see those kind of things. If you just reload, I mean, if you just any load, if you see here waiting, transferring, connected. So that's basically, I mean, at the back end, there is a three-way handshake protocol that is going on. So just to keep us aware, browsers tell that the connection is waiting. That means we are just waiting for the connection from the server, and then there is a transfer of the data. Once both parties acknowledge, then they transfer data to each other. Yeah. So that's a basic enumeration scan. Okay. So while you're doing a network security assessment, this is the first step which you're going to do. Next step is to do and scanning. Okay, now you figured out four ports. Now you are aware that what kind of IP address are in use, what kind of servers are in use, are there any of the network device that are in use or something like that. Okay, once you get an idea, then you jump into scanning phase. Okay, and then there is a third PT phase. So that's basically most of the time PT phase is not really, I mean, client won't expect you to do any kind of PT. They just want you to do a false positive review, because The scan which we are going to do using Nessus it gives us a lot of false positives. So I'll show you that false positives as well, how to verify that. But then just keep it in mind that PTs, we need to be very careful with the PT, because sometimes what happens is you're doing a scanning of, let's say, production environment, and in QA or in test environment, if you're doing PT, that's fine, because if anything goes wrong, then there's no real loss. Let's say if there is a production environment, you're doing an PT on that. Okay, so somehow you found an denial of service attack vulnerability, and you're trying to figure out if there is an actually denial of service or not using various types of techniques, and somehow the data center goes down, or the server goes down, or the entire subnet goes down. So basically, there will be a serious business impact. There will be a serious reputation impact. There will be in compliance impacts and everything. So that's the reason PT is very carefully done. But yes, I mean, it is good to know. I'll show you at the end of this course, not now, because I mean, we'll be specifically what is say using an operating system Kali. In that I'll be using a specific what is a framework, that's Metasploit. So I'll show you how to use different kind of exploits. So based on scenario, you can what is it? You can use those exploits. Okay. So next step is to do an scanning. Once I am done with the enumeration phase, so this phase I have quickly enumerated the IP address and figured out what exactly it is. Yeah, next phase is to do an scanning. So in scanning, we will be using one of the industry standard tool. I'll provide you few other tool names at the end of this class. You can if you are really interested, you can explore those. But 90% of times this is a tool that is used across the industry, and I'll be showing you quickly how to set up a Nessus, how to set up a policy, how to initiate and scan, what are different type of what do you say I mean, what are different type of things you need to keep in mind. When do you need to disable plugin, and when do you need to, when you have to perform an what is it, authenticated scan and everything. Okay, so that it will give you an holistical idea how to initiate and scan, and how to find for vulnerabilities on the network. Okay, just give me a second. Mummy. Yeah. So until now, do you guys have any kind of doubts? You can just quickly, I mean, before moving to scanning phase, if you have any doubts in enumeration, I can quickly go.
Yeah, Jan, this is Heather. I have a question.
Yes, please go ahead.
If in the Nmap scan in this server have two different IP address, let's say it's a one management IP address and one is the internal IP address. So which should we have to use for the scanning?
So basically,
How can we figure out so which IP address is good for scan? And
so generally what happens is the scope will be decided by the, I mean, organization generally. I mean, the one whom you are doing for this scanning. But then if you are, I mean, if you are doing on your own, or if you have to take up this particular project and you have to make sure that your network is scanned, then I would highly recommend you to do is first the UAT in SITs, and then you go for the production as well. Okay, because what happens is sometimes this most of the times same configuration and same ports will be open on the production as well as of the SIT or the UAT ones, but it is highly recommended to do all I mean, whichever servers comes in picture, whichever servers hit your network has to be gone through these particular scans. Okay, it could be a management IPs, it could be a production IPs, it could be your SITs, UATs, it could be your MTF, whatever it is. Okay.
so it means we cannot check. So our organization can decide for this.
Yes. Basically, organization will decide the scope. That, let's say there is a product that is going to be launched, and that particular product has 10 different databases, two different logical servers, 10 different 10 different type of redundant servers, or whatever is there. So list of 20-25 IP addresses related to that particular product will come under scope. Okay, so that management will decide what is the scope, and yep, what do they want to do any kind of PT, or do they just want to do any kind, do they just want to do an VA and all. Okay, if they talk about VA, then three things comes in picture. One is this enumeration, what we have seen till now, then there will be a security scanning from a black box perspective, and there will be a security scanning from a gray box perspective. So most of the time, gray box, it depends on scenario to scenario. Again, I'll explain you what basically is difference between a gray box and a black box while we are doing a network security scan. And sometimes you need to do a configuration review as well. So these days there are a lot of tools that are available directly. Even in Nessus as well, you will find a direct tool. You can just quickly use that to perform a configuration review. So I'll tell you in which scenario even the configuration review comes in picture while you're doing a network security scan. Okay, so yeah. So how about others? Do you guys have any kind of doubt, or you're okay with this until now?
So far we are good.
Yeah. How about others? If everyone is okay, I can go ahead, and if you want, again, just let me know. So if you feel that you're not able to understand, or you feel that I'm not thinking well, just let me know. Don't try to change my way. Yeah. Okay. So Shikha, you want to tell anything?
Yeah, so I guess it's going well. The only thing, I think you will already be sending the material so that we can map.
Yeah, I'll be providing you 5 to 10 different test IP address which you can use, because I don't want to, since you guys, all guys are sitting in US, and I don't want you guys to wrongly pick any IP address which relates to US government or somewhere. I'll send you the IP address which will be very safe. You don't need to worry. You hack it, you take down. You don't need to worry about anything. Okay. And I'll be sending you detailed notes. Like I have books for everything. For Nmap, I have a detailed 40-page book. I don't think so you really need to go through the 40-page book. It will be really good if you just go through 15 or 20 initial pages, which will give you an entire brief idea about Nmap scan. Okay, and then I'll share the detailed notes about the Nessus as well, what we are going to learn. And then the same IP address which I have given you for doing an assessment on Nmap, you can use it on Nessus as well. Okay, to perform scan.
Thanks.
Yep. Okay. And I'll send you some other notes as well if there's any. Okay. Yeah. Thank you. So in network security, the next phase comes is your scanning phase. In scanning phase, as I told you earlier, there will be a gray box scanning. There could be a black box scanning. Most of the times, 80% of times it is black box scanning. Sometimes you may need to, sometimes client may request you to do an credential scan as well. Log in into that particular system and do and scan to figure out what kind of vulnerabilities are existing on the system. Okay, when we talk about black box scan, it is purely from an external perspective. Or let's say you're sitting in an internal network, you have got 5 different IP addresses. You're doing a scanning of 5 different IP addresses. You're just able to ping that particular IP address, figure out, do an enumeration scan, figure out number of services running, and just do and scan on those services. Because until unless if there is no services running, there is no services running on that particular machine, you can't really do anything. If there is only one single service running, let's say something like 23, then you will get only one single issue, that's then telnet is in use and it is on plaintext protocol. But if there are, let's say, port number 80 is open, 443 is open, so there is an SSL that comes in picture. So your Nessus will perform and scan on the SSL as well. What kind of issues are there in the SSL, or if the SSL that is in use is properly secured or not. Let's say if there is a 3389 port open, that's an RDP port open. If that basically RDP itself has some kind of vulnerabilities previously, if there are if those vulnerabilities existing on the RDP or not, so we will verify those as well. And basically Nessus will verify those things. Okay, so what I want you guys to do is quickly, any one of them, I will require your machine access just for a minute. So Nessus download, quickly download and install. Yeah, this is the link. If anyone is using Windows, Mac, you'll find for everything. If you're using 64-bit, download the 64-bit one from here, and if you're using 32-bit, you can download the 32-bit one from here. Okay, if you want to check what is yours exactly, you can just go to here quickly, figure out the property. You'll figure out if it is a 64-bit or 32-bit, and download the right one. Okay, just quickly do this, and it will hardly take five odd minutes. Once you're done with the installation, you need to get, since I don't really have the professional one, I'll check if I have the professional license or not, because I will be using one of the companies, one of my freelance companies license, but I need to verify before that. But for now, we will be using the home version. Almost it is identical. Only thing is that there will be few there will be few modules which will not be able to use, but they are very similar to what we'll be basically doing in the home version. Okay, so once you're downloading this, you need to go to Nessus activation. So you need to get an activation code so that you can use that particular activation code to activate your Nessus. Okay, so can anyone quickly download Tenable, Nessus, and install it so that I'll show the quick setup on your machine, because I have already set up, I have Nessus set up on my machine, so I can't just go through the entire flow again. You can just quickly go over here, Nessus Home or Nessus Professional, both are same. You can you'll get free for some time, but you'll get this free as long as you have scanned 16 different IP addresses. Okay, you need to quickly register over here. Once you click on the register, you'll be taken to this particular page. You need to provide some random name and email address. You need to provide a genuine email address or an existing email address to which it will send you a key. Okay, for instance, let's say if you don't want to use your own email address, there is a disposable email service called Mailinator, which you don't need to sign up. You just need to provide something at the rate mailinator.com. You just need to go over here, quickly check for something at the rate mailinator.com. Click on go. You'll find that particular mail over there. Okay. So let's say I am just doing this go to meeting at the rate mailinator.com. Okay. I got this I have just entered this email ID. Select check these boxes. Click on register. Now it will send the activation code to this particular email ID. Okay, the service name is called mailinator.com. If you want to use it later, you can just go to this. Once you open this, you'll find an activation key over here. Okay, this is basically an activation code that is found here. So if someone has completed the installation, can they give me their screen quickly? So basically, it is pretty straightforward. First, it's a web-based application. Okay, once you install it, by default it will install everything. You don't need to do anything. You just need to double click. Send next. That's it. Okay. Then you need to go to your browser. Okay, you need to go to your browser and open this particular IP address. Okay, localhost colon slash slash localhost http colon slash slash https colon slash slash 8834. Once you open that, you'll basically get these kind of page. Okay, don't worry, click on advanced, click on proceed to localhost. Okay, since I have installed my Nessus already, I'm getting my username and password field directly. In your case, you will not get this particular page. You will get something like continue. Click on continue, then it will ask you for username, password. Just remember that you need to provide the username which you will remember later, and the password and confirm password. So just provide username and password which you have to remember, because all the time you need to access Nessus, you need to provide a credential. Okay, username and password. And then once you provide your username and password, you just need to click on next, and then it will ask you for an activation key. Okay, in that particular activation key, I have just obtained my activation key. So I have got my activation key on this photo. Okay, so this is my activation key. If someone has already completed the installation, they can just quickly use this activation key. Once you provide this activation key, your Nessus will be activated. Okay, next it will start downloading the plugins. What are those plugins? It is very important to know. Okay, so Nessus will download the plugins once you provide the activation key, and the activation key is accepted by the Nessus. So basically, the plugins are nothing but, let's say, I mean, since network, why do we use specifically an automated tool in network security? The reason is because there are a massive number of network devices, different type of network devices that are connected to networks. If it is an application security, you know that there is an OWASP top 10 you need to do. There are so and so process and methodology you can follow. But if it is a network device, it is really impossible to know everything. You may know how to audit an Windows machine. You may know how to audit an Linux machine, but it is impossible for you to know how to perform a review of all the entire set of range of machines or entire set of range of appliances. Okay, because there could, out of 100 IP addresses which are provided to you for assessment, there could be a firewall device, there could be a load balancer, there could be an switches, there could be an hubs, there could be network devices, there could be your biometric machines, there could be your some IoT related machines, there could be your different type of desktop. I mean, there could be a Mac. So it is really impossible for a normal human to remember every single vulnerability. For that reason, what these Nessus guys have done is they have created plugins for each different type of operating system, or basically a platform, and those plugin contains all the vulnerabilities that are released till date. Yeah, and the other reason behind using Nessus such kind of tools is because it is impossible to keep yourself updated with every single vulnerability that is released in the market, because there are, I mean, daily there are 2 to 3 different type of vulnerabilities that comes in market. And as an in order to keep your enterprise secured, you need to ensure that you're patching those type of vulnerabilities. So your Nessus will do that particular job, because as a manual, it is really impossible to keep a track of every single damn thing that is happening over there. Instead of that, Nessus uses plugins. Plugins basically contains different type of vulnerabilities. Okay, when you perform a scan, Nessus will try to figure out what kind of operating system it is, and accordingly it will initiate and scan related to that particular appliance. Okay, let's say you're doing a scan of Cisco ASA firewall. Okay, there will be a plugin in the Nessus by default. When you're downloading, by default there will be plugins installed related to Cisco and everything. So when you're doing an assessment, it will figure out what kind of endpoint it is. If it finds that it is a Cisco device, it will pick that particular plugin, and there will be list of vulnerabilities. There will be n different type of vulnerabilities, which I'll show you quickly after this. And all those vulnerabilities will be applied on that particular, will be reviewed on that particular device, and see if any of these vulnerabilities are affected or not. Okay, and it will give you a very decent report at then, which you can utilize however you want. Okay, so once you're done with the installation, you need to provide username, you need to provide password. Okay, so in my case I have provided username as Jinan and password as Jinan. So just keep easy password so that you can remember, or else you need to again reinstall everything. It is really difficult. You don't have the forgot password functionality over here. Okay, once you provide once you log in, this is how exactly you will get and view. Okay, let me just delete everything so that it looks new.
Jinan, I've installed it. It's downloading the plugin. You want to?
You're on downloading plugins option. I mean, you have provided the activation code as well, right?
Yeah. It's downloading right now.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, that's what I just wanted to show. Nothing more than that. Okay.
Oh,
yeah. So if everyone is able to follow that, then well and good. If you are not able to follow that particular procedure, just let me know. I'll show it on your machine. Okay, because since I have already installed on my machine, I can't show you those two, 3 steps. If you want, I can show it on your machine. Okay, so for now, just let me.
Janan, I am not able to.
Oh yeah, just. Who was that? Sorry, I forgot. Hello.
Yeah, I'm not able to.
Yeah, I'm just making you presenter. Okay, I'll just make you presenter quickly. Have you used the same activation code?
I just downloaded not activation code.
Okay. I'm just making you presenter so that I can quickly show the setup on your machine and everything. Yes, please.
If the activation code you gave is same as, it's not the professional one, right? It's the free version one.
Yeah, it's a free version one, and it is only for one use. Okay. If someone else is trying to use, it will be expired if someone has already used. It would have expired already. So Haider, I'm just making you a presenter. Show me your browser. Accept that. Okay.
Do you see my screen?
No, I'm just waiting for that. Oh. Yeah, now I can see your screen. Okay. You can see the Citrix setup. Can you minimize this Citrix one and show me the browser? Yeah, there.
Yes.
Yeah, can you just minimize the Citrix screen because I want to see the installation. I can only see Citrix on your machine.
Citrix.
The Citrix share file, I don't know what exactly it is.
Janine, does the Kali Linux has Nessus?
Sorry?
Does the Kali Linux has Linux Nessus?
Yeah, it does. You can use the, there'll be a by default Nessus available. Or if you want to install, you'll find a Linux file for that on the Nessus official website as well. You can use.
So it's the same as the free version one, right? So we can
Yeah. You can. For now, you use the free version only because the professional is too costly. I mean, $2,000 somewhere around. I don't really remember. Yeah. Haida, can you? I mean, I am able to see your screen, but I can only see the Citrix on your screen.
I open the browser, maybe something is a problem, so I can like disconnect right now.
Yeah, just make me presenter back then, in that case. So let me just take. Okay, don't worry. Yeah. And if someone else is finding any problem, just let me know. I'll show that on their screen. It's not able to show it on. Okay, so I mean, just go through that procedure. It's fairly simple. If you're not able, I'll send you the snapshots after this. You can quickly go through the snapshots and you can certainly make use of that if you're not able to follow. Okay, so for now, once you're done with the installation and everything, once you have activated, once your plugins are also downloaded, you will be redirected to a very similar kind of page. Okay, so there will be two tabs. Just keep in mind always. I mean, these are very general two tabs that will be available. And apart from that, if you are using an enterprise level Nessus, you will get a very good, beautiful dashboard over here. Okay, is this problem with everyone? Okay, no problem.
No, I can hear you clear.
If my voice is also breaking, just let me know. I can reconnect because if I connect GoToMeeting for a long time, the voice starts breaking. Okay. Yeah. So in this case, I mean, once you're logged in, you'll find a very similar kind of UI. But in enterprise, as I told you earlier, you'll find different type of charts. You'll find graphs and everything over here. So basically, it is nothing but it is just showing you your entire enterprise level. What is the devices that are connected and everything. I mean, what kind of vulnerabilities, how many of them are at risk basically, how many of them have critical vulnerabilities, how many of them have basic level vulnerabilities, high level vulnerabilities, medium and low. So those charts will be available, and apart from the rest of things will remain same. Okay, so there will be two tabs, scans and policies. So you can, in using scans tab, you're going to basically performance scanning, and using policies tab, you're going to perform an policy, you're going to create a policy. Why do we create a policy is because, let's say, I mean, you're going to use your Nessus on daily basis, maybe in some cases, or sometimes you may not be using in daily cases. So if you're using your Nessus frequently, it is very good to create one policy for each. And when you're initiating a scan, you just need to select a policy which you have created. You'll understand why we created a policy in some time, and just perform a scan. So policy is nothing but we just create a set of standard rules which can be applied when we are initiating a scan. Okay. So when we click on new policy, there are various types of tabs over here. Options over here. Templates, basically these are advanced scan. We will be looking into advanced scan, basic network security scan. I'll show you the credential patch audit as well, and rest of them you can just explore on your own. It is very similar. What I will be showing you this three. Okay. So for now, I'll be showing you very quickly on basic network scan. So what this does is it is suitable for any kind of host. Okay. In advanced scan, you can basically enable, disable plugins. You can provide the configuration details as well. Okay. But in network security scan, you will not get that particular option. So if you click on basic network security scan, you'll be taken to this kind of page. So you just share some kind of policy. Okay. So I'm just giving Sunday policy. So some name. Just provide a description name. Permission, keep it as it is, do not make any changes. So this is basically if you want to use any kind of permissions for this process to be used, so you can check this, but for now just keep it default. So discovery phase, this is what we have done using Nmap, but in Nmap we have done in a pretty a different way. We have provided IP address, we have selected different type of profiles and started scanning it. But in this case, there are two profiles that are available: common ports, all ports. So common ports, it is just going to scan the well-known ports, and out of that hardly 100 ports, not more than that. But if you give all ports, when you're doing scanning in real time, I would highly recommend you to go for all ports. Okay. But let's say if you have thousands of IP address, then it is not really possible to perform a scanning of all the ports. So you can, in that case, you can just quickly do a common port scan. Okay. For now, just keep it simple and straightforward. Common ports, but if you're when you're doing in practice, you can select this particular option. So I hope everyone is now aware at least what is basic difference between common and all ports. Okay. So this is a discovery scan, or basically called as an enumeration scan, where it will enumerate the network and figure out what kind of ports and everything is running. Because Nessus is basically going to probe the services and figure out the vulnerabilities on the services. It is not going to find the vulnerabilities what are present in the what do you say, in the machine. It is basically going to figure out the vulnerabilities from a black box perspective. Okay, so then there is an assessment. For now, since we are doing network security assessment, just keep it default. There are other different type of scans as well you can perform. You can even perform web related vulnerabilities as well, but we will be focusing that web related purely from an manual perspective in coming days. So for now, just keep it simple and straightforward. If you want to use, you can do this web related as well. It will search for web vulnerabilities, but not very in detail. It will just figure out for the very well-known common vulnerabilities. Okay, and there is a report. Since once you perform the scan, you will require a report. What type of what type of information you want in the report and everything. Yeah, because you'll get report in HTML and PDFs and Excel as well. So my report tells that show missing patches that have been suppressed. Hide results from plugin initiated as dependency. That's fine. Allow users to edit scan results. So why do we edit and scan result? Because there could be a possibility that is a false positive. There could be a possibility that is not a false positive, and it is an confirm vulnerability. So you can basically edit in the report as well. So designate a host by DNS name. So host, basically you are going to provide the IP address. So if you want the DNS names along with those IP address, you can select this particular option. But for now, I don't really think that's really useful. So display hosts that respond to ping. Yeah, this is very important. The reason is because, as I told you earlier, I may not have discussed. So in many organizations, what happens is they by default block the port number 7. That's basically echo port. So if they block port number 7, then what happens is your ping won't really work. Okay, so if you're trying to ping any network, you won't get any response. So your Nessus or Nmap by default, what they will think is the host is down. So they will not initiate and scanning. So what they will basically do is, what they will just give you a report that host is unreachable, the scan has been cancelled. So let's say you're doing a scan of 100 IP address, and out of that, those 10 IP address, on 10 IP address, the ping is disabled. So those 10 IP address scan will not be completed. So for that reason, you can just select this particular option, or if you want to uncheck, you can option uncheck this. Display unreachable host. This is very simple. If let's say out of 110 are not reachable, then it will provide you in the report. If you don't check this, the problem is, let's say after completion of scan, it will be really difficult for us to figure out what IP addresses are missed actually. So it will be good always to keep this option checked. Okay. Then there's an advanced. So basically in advanced, it's not related to scan or something. It's related to your traffic, to controller traffic. Okay. Scan low bandwidth links. If your data center, or if your machines which you are doing in scanning works on, let's say 64 MB line, and there are almost 2000 3000 servers, so 64 MB for 3000 server is nothing, right? And if you initiate and scan on that 64 itself, then let's say you provide 100 IP address, Nessus will send data to all those IP address at once, so that what happens is large amount of, or large chunk of data is sent at once. Your network basically gets choked because of the noise made by the Nessus. So there is a high chances that there is a denial of service kind of scenario that happens. So in order to make sure that you don't take down your server, or you don't take down your data center, you can go for the custom one. Okay, or just keep it the default one. Okay, so you can in order to use the custom one, we will be doing in advanced settings. You can use you can do the advanced policy. You can use the advanced policy and do setting on that. So scan low bandwidth links. So by default it will just scan 2 different hosts per go, and then it will just do 2 different checks. Okay, it will, it is not that it will only do 2 different checks and close that scan. It is that by default it does at least 10 to 15 different type of scans per request, but in this case it will just do 2 different type of checks per request. Okay, so after every scan done, it will wait for 50 seconds so that the network is stable, and then it will initiate another scan. And it will basically, if your Nessus thinks that the network is getting congested, then it will slow down the scan, it will pause for some time, and then it will initiate. Okay, so but these days I don't think so that's the scenario, because many of the organizations are running on high level, a very good bandwidth, such as 100 gigabytes or more than that. Okay, so in that case you can use this particular options whichever you want. Then there is a credential. This is very interesting. Okay, until now we have done, you can just quickly save and use this particular policy against any IP address, but it will do and scan from a black box perspective. It will not find any vulnerabilities or any patches missing or any kind of malicious software installed on your machine. It will basically do and scan on the services that are figured out in the discovery scan. Okay, then you go to credential scan. You go to credential tab. Okay, let's say you're doing a scanning of database, and the database could be Oracle database. Okay, you need to get an username, password, and SID from the admins or your client, basically whom you're doing for this particular scan. Okay, it's a fairly simple and straightforward. They will provide you this particular information. Once you provide this particular information, your Nessus will log into that particular device, provided 1521 port is open, or if there is any port that is configured for Oracle, you can just change. Let's say he has changed to 1001. You need to provide that particular specific port over here, or else your Nessus will not successfully log into that particular appliance or device or whatever it is. Okay, provide username and password and SID and save it. That's it. You're good to go. Or else, let's say you're doing in scan of MySQL. So in MySQL case is username, password, and the port. If you're doing in scanning of, let's say, PostgreSQL, so similarly, if you want to do in certain database name, so you can provide a database name, or else username and password is required for that. Okay, so you can do any database scan, and if you're doing any kind of Windows scan, let's say you're doing on a domain, that's basically a machine is connected to domain controller. Most of the time that happens, so you need to provide a domain name, username, and password, and what type of authentication mechanism you're using. Do you want an NTLM? Do you want a password? So I would highly recommend you to go for this password one, because that's a basic thing, basic type of authentication. And if you want to do an SSH, so there are various types of authentication mechanism. You have a public key, or do you have a username and password for the root, and what port is running on. Sometimes most of the organizations, they basically reconfigure it to 4 twos or triple twos. Okay, so you can use this. And similarly miscellaneous, if you're doing any one of this, okay, if you're doing an Palo Alto network scan, you can directly provide the username and password over here. Or if you're doing an VMware's SOAP API scan, you can do that. Okay, and these are plain text protocols. If you're doing an telnet scan, I mean, you want to scan using an telnet, when login using an telnet, you can use this telnet and all. Okay, so basically credential scan is nothing but it will log into that and it will find the vulnerabilities on the machine itself. The reason behind is, as I told you earlier, from a black box perspective, it just scans on the ports, and it just scans on the services that are open and running. But when we do a credential scan, it will basically log in into machine. Let's say my desktop has my desktop has Firefox 36.0 version enabled. This is really handy for me to do while I'm doing a pen testing, because you'll understand later. So 36.0 is a known, is a vulnerable version of Firefox. That is, I also know. But then if you're doing a black box scan, your Nessus will not tell that there is a vulnerable Firefox that is in use. But if you're doing a credential scan, it will tell that vulnerable Firefox is in use. Let's say I'm using a vulnerable version of Chrome, it will tell you that particular thing as well. There are unnecessary softwares that are installed. There is a malware on your machine. It will figure out everything and it will give you a result. Okay, so we'll look into that in advanced scan. So once you're done with that, you can just quickly save the policy. Okay, now since you have saved the policy, I'll just quickly show you how to use this policy to initiate and scan. Okay, so for now, what I'll do is I'll quickly take this particular same IP address, and then for you, I can provide you IP address, and you can do scanning on those IP address. Okay, so you need to now go to quick new scan. By default, you can select this basic network scan and do the entire procedure over here itself. But then the reason is because, let's say you're doing the scans multiple times in 2 to 3, multiple times weekly, it is good to create one policy. You just need to go to this particular policy, pick this policy. You don't need to do any extra scanning. You just need to provide your target, provide name, whatever you want, and just save it. That's it. Schedule is something. Since we want to schedule, we want to scan this IP right away. I'm not scheduling anything. If you want to schedule, because and there is an peak hour limitations as well, because you cannot perform and scan on a daytime on production servers because the traffic could be high. But at night time, between 12 to 3, the traffic is very, very low. You can just provide this particular option there itself, and you can just whatever time you want. And then there is a notification. If you want to send it to your email address, once the scanning is completed, the report will be sent to your email address, or notification will be. Then you can provide this. But for now, let's keep it simple and basic. And you can upload a target as well. You can upload an Excel file which will contain all the list of IP address, or you can just separate, you can provide all the IP address separated by comma as well. Okay. So you can basically you can provide the range as well, 0/24 or 0/16. It will calculate on its own and it will initiate a scan. Okay, and click on save. That's it. The scan is launched. You may need to launch it, and your scan is launched. Okay, it will take 15 to 20 minutes to scan entirely, and it will give you decent number of vulnerabilities if there are any. Okay, so for now, that's basically an basic scan. I'll show you quickly an advanced scan, and then we'll take a 10 minutes break, and then we'll jump into the next topic. Okay. So in advanced scan, I'll show you how to do any configuration policies as well and everything. Okay. So do you guys have any doubts until now, or you okay with this?
Janan, I have a question.
Please go ahead.
Yeah, if you're saying that if the echo port is blocked, so can we still do the scan? If
yeah, certainly. Because see, if echo port is blocked, that means just scan will not, the server will not respond me on that particular port only. Let's say if port number 80 is open, 443 is open, let's say 161 is open, 123 is open, 445 is open, all those ports will basically respond me. It will give me a successful connection, right? So connection will certainly go, but you need to that I'll show you in the advanced policy. Okay, how to configure that so that it won't first check if the IP address is up or not. It will initiate and scan directly.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So similarly, you can just create a new policy, or you can go to this new scan and create a policy on your own. Okay. So create a new policy. Once you go to this particular page, you'll find an advanced scan option over here. Okay. Similar, we have done the basic network scan, and exactly similar to that, you'll find a credentialed patch audit as well. I mean, it's pretty simple, similar and straightforward. Okay. As I told you earlier, it's basically credential patch audit comes in picture whenever there are patches missing on the machine. Okay. Sometimes you may need to verify what kind of patches are missing. Let's say since my Firefox is working on 36.0, that means a lot of patches are missing on my Firefox itself. Currently there is something like 43.0, which is the latest version. So all those patches are missing. So you want to figure out what softwares are outdated, or is there any software that is installed on your machine which is basically vulnerable, or there is a bug that has been fixed and there is a patch available but you haven't fixed. So if you want to figure out all this, just give me a second. Okay, I'm getting. Okay, sorry, I got a call, so I had to pick that. Okay, so that's a credential patch audit. So configuring and credential patch audit policy is pretty similar and the exact way what we have done using the basic scan. Okay, so advanced scan is bit. There are bit extra things which you can do using advanced scan. What I'll show I'll show that. Okay, so advanced, I'm just giving some name, permissions, keep it as it is. Discovery, yeah. So here is the question, to answer your question. If I click on this ping the remote host, I mean if I disable, if I slide this particular button, now it will not ping the remote host, but it will initiate and scanning. If I keep it enabled, it will basically ping the remote host first, check if the host is up or not, and then it will initiate and scan. Okay. So if a port number 7 is blocked, then in this case, it doesn't really make any sense, because it will check for other ports and see if there are any vulnerabilities or not. But in this case, it will make sense, because it will first ping the host and check if the host is up or not, and it will jump to next IP address. Okay. So then next go to keep this rest of thing as it is. If you want to go ahead and use a fast network discovery, you can check this option. This doesn't really make sense. I mean, make much difference. Just keep this simple. Sometimes what happens is your system may be connected to network printers, which may not have any kind of usernames password set to that. So you can select this particular printer. I mean, you want to perform and scan on the printer as well using your machine, so you can do that as well. Okay, so just keep this as it is. And sometimes what happens is only only whitelisted MAC address may be allowed to access that particular network. So in that case, you can provide a list of MAC address in the Excel file. You can just provide one MAC address or a registered MAC address that is on the network. Okay, so this is initially on the host discovery, because if you do not provide a MAC address, your network may not allow you to perform a scan. Okay, so in that case, this will be really helpful for you. There's a port scanning. Yep, this is what I have already. I mean, this we have already discussed. It is nothing but in advanced scan, it is by default going to it's going to do an common port scan. But in service discovery, you're going to select this particular probe all the ports, or if you uncheck this, it is just going to probe the common ports. So just keep this simple and simple and straightforward. Do not make any changes. If you want to do an UDP scan as well, you can just select the UDP Along with TCP, it will do an UDP as well, nothing more than that. So service discovery, probe all ports to find services. Yes, that's what we are looking for, right? We are looking for all 535 ports. So you can just select this particular option. Or if you want to do only well-known ports, you can just uncheck this and it will just check for well-known ports. Okay. So scan for TLS, SSL TLS on known on all ports or only known SSL TLS ports. Okay. Because what happens is, let's say your organization has reconfigured uh, few web applications uh, on 10,000 and 15,000 ports. Now those does not come under well-known ports, and that SSL may have vulnerabilities such as Heartbleed or Poodle or Drown attack or whatever it is. So if you do not do all port scan on SSL, then you're basically your Nessus will, your Nessus will just do figure out for well-known port scan, well-known ports on which SSL is running, and it will just initiate and scan on that, and it will complete the scan. Okay. So if you want to scan on other ports as well, so you can just select the all ports and you can initiate and scan. Okay. Similarly, you have an assessment. So in assessment, then yep. So you can do various type of configuration over here. I hope everyone knows that brute force. So basically, you're just trying to perform what is it? You're just going to do a trial and error of different type of usernames and passwords. But that's not really highly recommended in the network in an enterprise network. The reason is because sometimes there could be possibility that after 3 attempts your network may get locked out, or basically, sorry, your system may get locked out. So in that case, if you keep this enabled, then after 4 to 5 attempts, the account may get locked out or your system may get locked out or whatever it is. So in an enterprise environment, that's not an ideal scenario, right? Because let's say most of the times the username is admin, and by default your Nessus tries to do admin password 123 admin 123, and after that the system gets locked. So for that reason, we'll just keep it disabled. We will only use the credentials which are provided by the user. That basically which we provide here. Okay, we will be only using the credentials which we have provided over here. If you don't provide any kind of credentials over there, then I'll not allow my Nessus to do that. Okay, if you check this, then it will check for all default different type of default passwords as well. Okay, click on web application. So since we are not doing any kind of web application scan, just keep it disabled for now. Windows, by default it will do in Windows if you have if you have provided the credentials as well. Then there is a malware. If you want to do any malware scan, you can provide all the list of good MD5 hashes. So from where do you get malwares MD5 hashes? So there are very good sources such as VirusTotal. So VirusTotal is Google's product basically. It will give you very decent list of everything. Uh, if you want to scan a certain malware or certain exe against 100 different type of antivirus, then you can just upload that particular file over here, and it will scan against, or it will analyze against almost 15 to different almost 30 to different 30 to 35 different type of what is it, antivirus. So let me just show you quickly. Yeah, yeah. So this is an web shell. Let's see how many antivirus trigger flags it as a virus. So this is an MD5 hash. Similarly, you'll get an this is not an MD5 SHA, basically salted hash. So you can get a list of that and you can just upload over here, so that while it is performing and scanning, it will try to match if there is any malware installed on your machine or not. And if you see here, AVG caught it as a virus, and yeah, these are all this antivirus termed it as a normal file, but rest of the antivirus are flagging it as a virus. Okay, so for each scan you do, or for each file, or for each malware, there is an salted hash or an MD5 hash. It all depends. Okay, in this case there is an salted hash, but then in most of the case you will get an MD5 hash. You can just upload that particular file over here, and it will start scanning that machine. So report, it's very similar to same which we have discussed previously, and advanced. So here you can just manually configure the number. If you want to do only 111, if you want to only how many simultaneous host check you want to do. I just want to do 1, you can provide that. If you want to provide 10, you can provide that as well. So simultaneous checks per host, if you want to do 10, you can provide the 10. And after every scan you want to give for 15 seconds delay, you can just provide 15 seconds over here. Yeah. So this is basically settings. Credential is exactly same what we have discussed in previous one. Compliance. So there are different type of devices over here. You can perform a compliance scan on various different type of devices. Okay, let's say you're doing a scan on some of a Unix related machines, so you can just select any one of the correct one and provide a configuration file. So if you're doing in Windows, let's say you're doing a scanning of I was talking to you about configuration reviews as well, right? So that particular configuration reviews can be achieved using this particular module of this particular policy. Okay, so in order to do a compliance review, you need to provide credentials compulsorily, because it will log into that particular machine and it will check for registries, or it will check for the configuration and everything. Okay, let's say you are doing a scanning of IIS 6.0, then you just need to provide all the information over here, and by default it will initiate and scan. If you're doing a scanning of any one of the Cisco iOS related device, so you can just provide all this information. All this information will be provided to you by the administrators, or if you have a config file, you can just directly add this config file to that particular scan. It will do a quick review and it will provide you a result. Okay, or if let's say you're doing a scanning of some kind of FireEye device, so you can just get the config file. All these config files will be provided you by the admins. Okay, you need to request them. Sometimes they are very rigid to provide you configuration files because it contains very highly sensitive details. So in that case, you can either log into that particular machine remotely using this settings, and you can basically do and scan as well. Okay, so it all depends. Compliance review is pretty straightforward. You either get an configuration file, upload here, and start a scan. It will do a compliance review, or else you need to scan. You need to log in remotely and do that compliance review. Okay, so you use this particular credentials over here using miscellaneous or plain text authentication, or if you're doing any cloud services, you can provide this cloud as well. And compliance. Okay, so plugins. Yep, this is the important thing. If you see here, the plugins which were downloaded in the first step are nothing but these are the plugins that were basically getting downloaded. So if you see here, AIX local security checks. So on AIX machines, there are almost 11,000 different type of vulnerabilities. Now just imagine, manually it is impossible to remember. I mean, for a normal human, it is impossible to remember all this number of vulnerabilities. Okay, if you click on this, now all this vulnerabilities will be loaded over here. Okay, and this is a plugin ID. So if you just click on any of this, it will give you detailed information about that particular vulnerability. The remote host is missing a vendor security patch, and description is this, and what is the plugin ID, what is the risk, it is a high risk issue. And if you just Google about this, you will get detailed information about that particular vulnerability. Okay, so you'll have a CVE ID for us for everything, but in this case I don't find any CVE ID. Okay, let me just go to Amazon. Yeah, so if you see here, in this case there is some kind of security update that is missing because of most probably this kind of host or corporate proprietary softwares, they're basically security patches missing. Because of that, the systems become vulnerable, right? So your Nessus will tell that this patch is missing. Because of that, your system is vulnerable to this kind of attack. So in order to patch this attack, you need to update this particular patch. Okay, so it will give you this particular information. Apart from that, it will even provide you the references and the CVE ID as well. So this particular CVE ID will, in this case as well, you don't have CVE ID, but you have some kind of ID. If you just Google it, maybe you may find other information. Yeah, so there is some detailed information on the Amazon Web Services page itself. So it will explain you what exactly it is. Yep. So yeah, just remember that while you're doing and scanning in corporate environment, you need to ensure that you are disabling the denial of service plugin. Okay. Okay, by default, when Nessus initiates and scan, it will also check for denial of service vulnerabilities, and it does not only check for denial of service vulnerabilities. It will even try to confirm whether there is an actual DOS or not. And in that course, there is a high possibility that your server may go down. Okay, so just keep that in mind always, that you disable this denial of service plugin. Okay, or else if your client tells that no, he wants to check if there is an actually denial of service, I mean, if their network devices or if their security appliances are able to handle the denial of service scenarios or not. So in that case, you can basically and keep this enabled. Okay, so you can just enable, disable whichever you want, because see, SCADA is something which you don't really want, which you don't really think is really useful while you're doing it scanning in a corporate environment. But if you're going into OT environment, that's basically operational technologies environment, rest of the things may not play very important, but SCADA will play very important. Okay, if you click on the SCADA, it will even provide you what kind of vulnerabilities are there. Okay, so it will provide you, it will give you a detailed what to say, vulnerability explanation at the end. Okay, so you can enable, disable whichever you want, and you can just change. Let's say you're doing a scanning of only Linux machines, you want to create a policy specific to only Linux machines, so you can just quickly disable all the Windows related plugins. Okay, and just keep all the Linux related open. Okay, which are necessary you feel, and which you feel that are not necessary, you can just tweak this plugin. Okay, and click on save. Policy is created. Now to initiate a scan, it is exactly same. Go to your scans tab, click on new scan, scroll down. Okay, you'll find advanced policy. Now next is pretty straightforward. You don't need to configure or go through the entire steps again and again. If you want to just quickly do a scan, provide an IP address, launch, save the scan and launch it. But if you have not created policies, what happens is, let's say you go to scan, new scan, then you need to go to advanced scan, do all the settings again and again. While you're doing scanning for next, second time, third time, fourth time, you just need to follow the same steps again and again. Okay, so that's basically usage of Nessus. That covers our most of the parts of Nessus. Okay, so in this particular part, we have seen how to do an enumeration scan, how to do a network VA scan. Basically, we have only done VA. Okay, so PT is still remaining. Don't worry, we'll cover in the end classes. Then there is an what is a configuration reviews as well. It's a pretty straightforward. You need to gather the information from the administrator. He will provide you the config files or whatever files are there, and you just need to upload in your advanced scan policy and initiate and scan. It will provide you what kind of is there any non-compliances that is, is there any non-compliance, or is there any configuration that is missing, and everything will be covered in that particular scan. Okay, so that covers our network security basics and scanning and VA. So whatever doubts you have, you can just ask me quickly, or else we will take quickly 10 minutes break, and then we'll start with next concepts. Yeah. Nothing, or you guys are on the system, or
I think break is a better idea.
I know.
Yeah.
Yes, please.
I have a quick question.
Please go ahead.
Normally, how much time it takes for the scanning or advanced scanning?
15 to 20 minutes. 15 to 20 minutes per IP you can take. Yeah, but again, sometimes it depends. If server is not responding to you properly, it could take 2 hours as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
And can this be scripted, all those scanning?
Scripted as an automated, you're talking?
Yeah.
So
no, other than using the UI, is there any?
No. For Nessus, there is no UI. But yes, if you want to do an automated scanning using different type of, then there is a tool called Nikto. That's a very decent tool. Nikto also does, not really that much in-depth scan, but a very, I won't really term it as an in-depth scan, but just a rough scan if you want to do, you can do using Nikto. That's a Perl script which you can download for Linux, and you can just, if you're on Kali Linux already, you can just search for Nikto and use it.
And I also installed Nessus on my computer, but it seems like I got the activation code, but when I launch in browser, localhost 8334,
Yes.
it doesn't load. I mean,
Let me make you presenter. Show me. Show me your screen. So for rest of folks, if you you can just quickly take break. I'll clarify she cast out and then we'll have 10 minutes break. Okay. Yep. Just open that. You don't. Yeah, that should be enough. Click on OK. Open. No. Go to your browser and just provide localhost colon https. Provide https colon localhost 8834 colon. Yeah. I guess there is something that has happened. Can you use a different browser? Can you check on Chrome once? I don't think
yeah,
that should make much difference, but I'm sure. Yeah, it's working. Click on Advanced. Proceed. Yeah, click on Continue. Yeah, provide username and password, whichever you like. Just remember
okay,
that.
I guess I got.
Yeah, no, in next step you just need to provide your activation code, that's it.
Right, got it. Yeah.
Okay, folks. Take quick.
Yeah,
Yes, please. Yes, please.
Janan, this is Zahid.
Yeah.
Okay. I did the same process, but since for a while, like maybe 20 minutes or 25 minutes, it still seems like installing Nessus. So is it okay? It's on local host 8834. Before that, it gave me some certificate errors.
Yeah. You need to forward. You need to. Forward that particular request to next step. Certificate error is fine.
Okay.
Is it downloading the plugins?
Well, it seems like it is in the middle. It is showing Nessus and initializing. Please wait. So it is still, downloading. Seems like
Yeah. Wait for some time and see if it is not still. If it is not going
I
forward,
think it
then you.
takes some time. For me also, it took a lot of time.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
That's fine.
maybe.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
no problem.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. I'll just catch you in 10 minutes. Okay.
Sure.
Sure. Hey, hi. Just let me know when you're ready to start. Okay. Okay, so if everyone is back, we can start. Sumit, Anita. Okay, let's start again. Okay, perfect. So almost everyone are in. So our next concept will be all about now application security. Okay. So for now, what I'll do is I'll simply go ahead and explain the basics of AppSec, what we are going to explain, what we are going to learn, and everything, and just explain about the work. That's it for today. And from tomorrow, starting from tomorrow, we will discuss about different type of vulnerabilities. So tomorrow I'll go ahead with a very simple and straightforward vulnerability called sensitive data exposure, and then I'll go ahead with the explanation of injection first, most probably cover almost all. Okay, so let's see how it goes. But for today, I'll just keep it simple, straightforward. Don't worry. I mean, nothing much practical because you have enough to practice for now. But yeah. So now, next concept will be application security. So as I said to you earlier, in application security, we will be mostly concentrating on OWASP top 10 related vulnerabilities. But before that, I just want to make few things clear: what we'll be learning, how we'll be learning, what are different tools we will be utilizing, and all. Okay. Now, application security. So it's all about web applications, mobile applications, and thick clients. Okay. So we'll be looking into web applications, basics of mobile application at the end of this course. That is when we start learning the Kali Linux. Along with that, we'll be learning the mobile app related issues as well. Okay, and then there's a thick client. So thick client is something pretty different. But if you want to have an idea, I can take you through. I can talk you through that as well. What is thick client and how to test that. But before that, it is. I mean, in order to do mobile app or thick client, I mean, it is really important for you guys to understand the web application and the concepts of web application, vulnerabilities of web application, what are client-side related vulnerabilities, what are server-side related vulnerabilities, what are database related vulnerabilities, and everything. So before starting this, same question again. How many of you are very well aware about OWASP Top 10? Have you ever done thoroughly, or do you have just an idea about OWASP Top 10? Or let's say I give you a website, if I ask you to find SQL injection, will you be in a position to find that?
No, no.
Okay, how about others?
No.
Okay. Shika, I have heard you that you had some experience with this, right?
Yeah, so yeah, we do follow WAS top 10 from this verification.
So,
point of view.
but
Yeah.
you know thoroughly all those things, or you're still in a starting stage or something?
Yeah, I guess theoretically I have done that, but practically not
Okay,
quite a lot. But
that's a great. I mean, I'm sure you will learn a lot in this. Okay, so since you guys, I mean, many of them are new to this and they don't really have much of idea, I'll take you through everything in detail. I was thinking that if everyone has rough idea, I can just take you through basic things and go ahead with the what do you say, practical stuff. Okay. Anyhow, so application security. I mean, first of all, there are again phases in this, methodology in this, but you most of the times it is all about your brain.exe that comes in picture. You're going to use tools, but then there are automated tools as well for application security, but they are not highly recommended. The reason is because let's say you use an IBM AppScan, which is a very famous tool, and almost all the organization use IBM AppScan for their scanning. But let's say if there is any business logic vulnerabilities, privilege escalation, different type of issues, your AppScan will not be able to figure out, or AppScan will not find those kind of issues because it requires human intelligence to understand that issue. Because there could be a certain small trick that you can only do manually. Once you find manually, if you are good at scripting, you can certainly script those things. And I mean, it's not necessary that you need to do everything manually. But yes, you can automate things as well, but for that you need to know exact flow, exact injection points, entry points, and everything. Okay, so in today's class, for today, what we will be discussing is application security related basics. What is an exact technology stack that comes in picture when we talk about application security? What are different type of attacks that happens at a client side? What are different type of attacks that happens at a server side and at a database side? And what are different tools we are going to utilize? And I'll probably take you through basics of burp suite. We'll be looking into advanced burp suites when we start doing an assessment in future. Okay, for today I'll keep it simple for a burp suite explanation as well. And why do we use burp suite as well? I'll be explaining you that. So when we talk about application security, it is all about web applications which we are going to do an assessment. Okay, so applications generally has client-side scripts, it has server-side scripting, it has database that comes in picture. Okay, so when we talk about client-side, so it basically is loaded on the browser. When we talk about server-side scripting, it basically loads on the logical server or a middleware or whatever it is. Okay. Then when we talk about database, it is basically a dedicated server or a shared server with the logical server. So where all the data resides. Okay. Now attack can happen either on client side, attack can happen on server side, and attack can happen on database as well. Okay. When we talk about client side, that means there is a obviously there is a high risk at a client side as well, but it is a targeted attack. Let's say there are 10 different users, and if you want to do an attack on a server client side, then you have to target all these 10 users. It is not that you target one user and you get access to all 10 users. But when we do an attack on a server side, and if we are successful on that, that means we get an access to the entire logical server, and using that we can get an access to the database. Okay, but so in this case, you don't need to target any user. In this case, you can directly compromise or you can directly figure out vulnerabilities on the application itself and get an access to the application. Okay. Then there comes an database attacks, database level attacks that such as SQL injection, insecure direct object references, or there are any privilege escalations which we can use to figure out different type of attacks. So basically, when we talk about database attack, we are trying to attack the data present on the database and try to retrieve. And this could be a single user's this could be a single user information or an entire database itself, because if your login authentication mechanisms, your different type of sensitive data such as your financial details if it is a financial application, your healthcare records if it is a pharmaceutical application, if it is an what is a healthcare application. So if you are attacking on a database level, you get an access to everything. Okay, so only on a client side, it is purely you're going to target a single user to perform an attack. Okay, so basically when we talk about client side attack, that means most of the thing comes in picture is JavaScript, clickjackings. Okay, HTTP only, that's a loophole, not basically a vulnerability which JavaScript will exploit it. So these two are very major vulnerability that comes in picture. Out of this, execution of JavaScript, that's basically called as cross-site scripting, is the most dangerous one. Clickjacking, it depends on scenario to scenario. I mean, sometimes it could be very dangerous. Sometimes even if there is a clickjacking vulnerability, you can't really do anything on that. Okay, let's say there is a page where there is a payment option. Okay, so you just need to view the information and click on payment, and your payment is done. So in that case, if there is a clickjacking vulnerability, I can share it with victim. Automatically, the moment victim clicks on payment, the payment happens. So in that case, it is obviously a vulnerability. But in other cases, there is nothing as such, like you without entering anything, you just click and something happens. That's not something that cannot be exploited in real time. Let's say on Facebook, there was a very famous clickjacking on Facebook, that's basically called as a like jacking as well. Okay, so attacker can send a malicious page to victim. The moment victim clicks on it, automatically there is a photo or there is a post or something that gets liked automatically. Basically in like, you don't need to enter anything, right? You just need to click and that happens. So that's basically clickjacking. We will look into that in detail, how to find those issues and how to exploit those as well. Cross-site scripting is purely and browser level attack. That's basically client-side attack. We can execute an JavaScript on victim's machine. The exploitation could be right from stealing the tokens, that's basically cookie data, and stealing, crashing the browser, injecting malicious JavaScript in the browser. It could be anything. Okay, so we'll look into the practical exploitations, practical way of figuring out cross-site scriptings, different type of cross-site scriptings there are present, such as your DOM-based, reflected and stored. We will be looking into all those three type of those three type of cross-site scripting, and we will be looking into exploitation as well. How does an actual exploit occurs in real time if there is a cross-site scripting? Because 99%, 90% of people in security field, they don't really know how to exploit and cross-site scripting. But I'll not leave you there. I'll ensure that you guys are aware of the exploitation as well. Okay. Then comes your server side. So I'm just giving you a rough idea. Don't worry. It is not that I will be only covering this. I'm just taking you through everything so that you have a brief idea at the end of this class. Yes, these are the things I will be covering, and these are the things you will be learning. And apart from this, there are many other things which we will be learning. Okay, so server side attack. So let's say there is a remote code execution, there is an XXC attack. Basically, we are doing an attack on the server itself. We can execute, we can retrieve the data from the server itself. We can download the files from the server. We can read the internal server resources as well. We can do whatever we want on the server basically. For doing that, we need to find a vulnerability. So the vulnerabilities could be remote code execution, it could be file upload vulnerabilities. Basically, file upload vulnerabilities could lead to remote code execution, remote command execution. Basically, you're going to execute a command on the server. XML entity expansion attacks, which are famous and found on various applications these days. So we'll be looking into how to test on web services. So that's basically in web services you will find this XXC type of attacks. So in web services there are different type of XML injections. Out of that, this is one. We'll be discussing about another type of attack, that's an XML. That's a billion laugh attack. Basically, we can shut down the server itself. So when we talk about server side attack, that doesn't only mean that you're going to access the server. It even comes to picture that, let's say you find a denial of service vulnerability using which you can take down the entire server. So even that comes under server side attack. So you'll be looking at those as well. Then comes to our database related attack. So in database related attack, the most famous one is SQL injection. Because of that, 60% of hacks in the world happens because of SQL injections. Okay. So we'll be looking into detailed SQL injections, error-based, union-based. I'll be showing you Oracle-based SQL injections. I'll be showing you how to find a time-based SQL injection, and I'll be showing you manual exploitation as well, how to retrieve data manually, different type of queries in different scenarios, and then I'll be showing you the best and easiest way and an industry standard way to retrieve data as well. Yeah. Then there is an insecure direct object references, which we'll be discussing. Basically, it's purely about authorization. Okay. Then we'll be discussing about authentication mechanisms and session management as well. It's not all about hacking something. It's all about you need to know few controls, such as how to ensure that cookie data is secured properly, because once you enter username and password, your cookie data is nothing but, is a substitution for username and password to maintain that particular session. If someone is able to steal your cookie data, then he can basically replicate your entire session. So it is our responsibility to ensure that cookie data is properly secured, so that attacker cannot basically steal the cookie data. So we'll be looking into that as well. What are different type of attack scenarios that comes in picture, and what are different type of what are different type of mechanisms to ensure that cookie data is secured. Okay, so I'll explain you about everything in detail, right from basics. Don't worry. This is just to give you an overview of this. Okay, I'll explain you why exactly that happens, where exactly that attack can happen, how to find those kind of attack, how to exploit those kind of attack, and at the end I'll even discuss how to mitigate those kind of attacks as well. Okay. So the good thing is you don't need to code anything in all this. It is all about finding vulnerabilities, finding. That's it. Okay, you don't need to do you don't need to write any scripts or anything. But yes, there are a lot many things which you can automate using scripts, or you can further explore using scripts. But yes, if you are really interested into that, you can certainly do, no question in that. But for now, let's make it simple and straightforward. Okay, so all these attacks are covered in a category called OWASP Top 10. So OWASP is basically Open Web Application Security Project. Security researchers around the world have came on one single platform, and they have categorized the top 10 vulnerabilities. So these 10 vulnerabilities are the ones which are generally, which are basically found, which are basically, sorry, which are found in many of the applications. And if an security researcher or a tester is able to find these 10 vulnerabilities, or is able to ensure that these vulnerabilities are not present in the application, then application is secure up to 80%, not even 80%, I'll tell 70%, because there are always 10 to 15% of chances that some or other out of the box vulnerabilities are present. Okay, so we will be discussing in detail about OS top 10, and almost it will be covering all the SANS 25 vulnerabilities as well. So basically SANS top 25. So SANS also has categorized their vulnerabilities, their set of vulnerabilities. It is nothing but in OWASP top 10 it only tells injection flaws, and under injection flaws there are a lot many types of injection flaws, but when you go to SANS 25 they have elaborated every single vulnerability. Okay, so we'll be discussing about that as well. Yep. So in order to understand this, you need to understand the web application and working of web application first. Okay, so there are two types of applications. Okay, static and dynamic. I hope everyone understands this, or else, or else I explain it quickly. So static application is something like it does not have any kind of communication with the database. It is purely an HTML page wherein you cannot interact with the database, or wherein you cannot enter any kind of data. So let's say there is a contact us field, a contact us page. In that contact us page, there is an address mentioned, there is an email mentioned. That's it. That's a static page. You cannot do anything on that particular page. You can just go through that page, go to that page and view that page. But when it comes to dynamic page, okay, so let's say there's a contact us page, and in that contact us page you need to enter first name, last name, email ID, your query, and submit. So that's basically a dynamic page, because you are entering something and it is interacting to something. Like it could be that particular contact us form could be sent to an email, or that particular contact us form could be sent, could be uploaded in a database or wherever it is. Okay, so the basic difference between static and dynamic page is nothing but in static page you can't do anything really. You just can visit the page, that's it. You may have links to other different pages redirecting, that's it, nothing more than that. When it comes to dynamic page, let's say your Facebook is an entire dynamic application, your wall post is an dynamic page, your dynamic part, your chats are basically dynamic part, your whenever you click something there is some kind of request that is sent to database, that's a dynamic thing. You comment something, you delete comment, you edit comment, you update comment, all those comes under dynamic contents. Okay, so dynamic content is nothing but you can just change it on runtime, or update it on runtime, or enter it on runtime. Okay, so from a threat model perspective, that means from a security perspective, static may not have many different type of vulnerabilities. Okay, it could have very limited vulnerabilities. Like because of security misconfiguration, you can directly get an access to the server, or there may be a clickjacking vulnerability, but I don't really see any other different type of vulnerability. But when it comes to dynamic, there are a lot of vulnerabilities, because it interacts with the server continuously, it interacts with the database continuously, it may have different set of users. Your static application may not have users, but your dynamic application may have users, so you can target every user using different type of vulnerabilities. Okay, so we will be doing most of our assessment on dynamic assessments, dynamic vulnerabilities, dynamic applications, really sorry. So I mean, this is this is a static page. Okay, but if there was anything like, if I click on download, it is basically there is a possibility that it could be what is it? It could be interacting with database or something. Like the moment I click on download, it may be something like there will be a request that will send to database, and database will send you another request, and you will be redirected to download page. So in that case, that would be an dynamic page. But in this case, let's see if it is a dynamic or static. So it is just redirecting me to another different page. So I clicked on this download, and it just redirected me to login page. That means that's a static link. So if you see here, this is a dynamic URL because it has multiple parameters. There is an there is a callback parameter, and there is another underscore parameter. Okay, so attacker can basically inject on this, or I'll explain you about the injection points as well. What are those injection points? Entry points are basically why entry points are very important, and how to find those as well. Okay, so next is that once you find the application is dynamic page, you need to find an entry point. So why an entry point is very important? Because let's say you want to compromise the server, that means you need to send something to server. You just can't sit before the application and think that it will get hacked, nothing happens, right? You need to send some kind of malicious payload or malicious script which server accepts, server consumes it, server tries to execute that and see what exactly happens, because server does what you are exactly telling server to do. Let's say you send a malicious web shell. The moment you send to server, server will respond to you accordingly that yes, this is what exactly has happened, and there could be possibility that you might have gotten server access. All this happens because of entry point. Let's say you have a SQL injection vulnerability. You just can't sit there and think of there is a SQL injection vulnerability and you will find it. You need to inject something on some parameters. Your database will accept that particular thing and it will respond to you accordingly, so that you find a vulnerability on your application itself. Okay, so entry points are very, very important. The most common entry points are your get, you'll find on get or post methods. Those are basically consisting parameters. Okay, so your parameters are nothing but temporary variables which will temporary values, sorry, these are variables which will copy the value which you are sending from your client to the server or to the database, and accordingly it will give you a response. So for example, let me show you an let's say this is an URL. Okay, this is an URL. In this case, the entry point is your ID. This is a parameter name and this is a value pertaining to this particular parameter. Okay, so in this case there is one entry point, that's basically ID is equal to 13. This will be considered as an entry point by an attacker. The next thing is he will start for figuring out for a secure vulnerability. So first he will try to do and inject a single quote and observe what exactly you're getting in response. You're getting a SQL error. This indicates there is a possibility of SQL injection. Why exactly it has happened? Because there is an entry point. I have entered some kind of malicious data over here. Over there, database accepted it and it responded me that, boss, whatever you're trying to send is not a correct one, because there is a syntax error that has occurred due to that. So this could be possibility that there is a SQL injection vulnerability. Then next is, this can be considered as an entry point for cross-site scripting as well. I'll try to figure out if there is a cross-site scripting vulnerability or not by injecting few XSS payloads and see if I'm able to execute the JavaScript on the browser or not. And if the JavaScript gets executed on the browser, that means this particular entry point is vulnerable to cross-site scripting as well. Okay, so in this entry point, the main thing is your parameter. Your parameter is basically consuming this particular value, whatever you are entering will store temporarily over here. It will send all the way to database or a server wherever it has to send, and you will get and respond accordingly. If there is any security implementation already in place, then there is a possibility that you may not have, you may not find any kind of vulnerability. Okay, so entry points are very important. So I'll just, so in this case, let's say I load this particular application. Okay, submit. So there could be possibility that is a post request. Okay, now yes, this is a post request. Okay, in order to the basic difference between get and post request is nothing but in get request, whatever you see in URL is in get request, and apart from that you will have multiple parameters. You could have one single parameter or multiple parameter, it all depends. And in post, similarly, these parameters, instead of sending in get method, they will be sent in hidden format, that's basically post method. But using a sniffer or using a proxy tool, which we are going to discuss in next 5 to 10 minutes, that's Bob Suite. So which will capture all the proxy, which will capture all the get request and post request. And if there are any such requests which are containing post data, post request data will be captured over there. So for now, I'm just having a simple sniffer in my browser. That's basically live HTTP header. You can install it for your Chrome or Firefox for now. Okay, so if you see here, this is clearly telling it's a post request, and this is clearly telling it's a get request. And in order to understand what are the entry points, you need to always see for parameters. So parameters can be what is it? It can be identified easily just by seeing something like question mark something is equal to, or in post, if you see here, this question ID is equal to 13. Since it is not getting concatenated with the URL, you don't really need to worry about the question mark on the start, but after that you will find ampersandile. So every ampersandile, and after that ampersandile you will find a parameter name. So every parameter name could be an injection point, and this value could be an entry point for you where you can basically enter something, and this particular parameter will consume that data, will send all the way to server will respond to you accordingly. Okay, so in this case, if you see here 1 2 3 4 5 different entry points, yeah, but in get there is nothing, right? In URL there is no entry point. There could be possibility that URL also may contain some parameters, so even that could be considered as an entry point. And your para. Apart from that, do you think there are any other entry points over here? Yeah. Any other entry points apart from this get and post?
The content type?
Content type, yes, that could be one entry point. All this could be entry point, okay? Like if you want to do an host header injection. These are headers, okay? Basically, these are request headers and these are response headers. You cannot inject anything on response headers, but you can inject something on request headers. The reason is because it goes all the way to server consumes this request header, and accordingly it will give you a response. Like let's say there's a user agent. So basically server will try to understand what kind of environment you're working on. In this case, I'm using my Mozilla Firefox. So it clearly tells Mozilla and I'm using my Windows 10. If you're using Mac, you can clearly see there will be a Linux or a Mac or something like that is shown over here. So that accordingly the page will be rendered on your browser. Let's say you're browsing and google.com from your mobile, you'll get a different UI. But when you're opening google.com in your browser, you get a different UI. The reason is because it will consume the UI and see from what environment you are basically originating from, and accordingly you'll get a page. So since it is consuming by the server, there could be high possibility that I can inject something apart from this. Server consumes it, and there could be possibility that I can perform a remote code execution. So that's basically local file inclusion. Yeah, we'll look into that as well in detail I mean mostly next week, not next week. It will come after 3 classes. Yeah. So this accept anything after colon. This is an header name and this is a value pertaining to that header. User agent, this is an header name and value pertaining to that particular header. So these are different type of header names. All these header names can also be utilized as an injection point, and you can start injecting it. Okay, like on host, there is a host header injection. On user agent, whenever you want to inject anything on a log file, so that's basically log injection. You're going to utilize this. So we'll look into that log injection as well. There is an accept. So the content type. Your content type can be used in various ways, such as injecting some malicious payloads, or apart from that, content type exploitations as well. Because let's say there is a JSON request. If you guys are understanding programming, I mean, if you guys understand basic difference in JSON and XML. So if there is a JSON endpoint, if I just when you are executing that request, the content type will clearly tell it's a JSON endpoint. But if you're changing it from application/JSON to application/XML and server accepts it, that means I can basically execute an XML request as well. An XML request, I can send a malicious XML request and instead of JSON, which I'll show you in the XML injection part as well. Okay, so these are basically injection points. Okay, while you're doing a security assessment, it is very important for you to know about injection point. If you don't, the reason why I am stressing this much is because let's say an application is having 100 entry points and you have tested 15 entry points and you think that no, I have not found any vulnerabilities on this 15 entry points. That means rest of the entry points may not be vulnerable. But no, you're wrong. You test 999 entry points and the 1001, the one last which you have not tested, could be vulnerable to LFI, could be vulnerable to RFI, could be vulnerable to SQL injection, cross-site scripting, ID, or it could be vulnerable to any other different type of injection point. Okay, injection attack. So it's very important for you guys to know entry points. Okay, now once you, and I hope you guys have now rough idea. There's a web application communicates with the server communicates with the database. Whenever, let's say, I click on edit, that means there is some communication that will go to server, and along with that, there is an ID is equal to 1. So it is basically referring to some kind of object on a database, and server will basically communicate with the database. You're not going to communicate directly with the database because it sits in some DMZ zone or wherever it is, and you get an you get a response accordingly. Like database will send to server will send it to your client, and then there is an HTML that is coded for your design of your application, and accordingly at proper places the data is inserted and you get a response. Okay, now every single request that is originating from your browser has to be captured, has to be tampered, has to be injected with different type of malicious payloads, and observe the response accordingly. Okay, That's what you guys need to do. Now, how to do that? That's what there's a tool called Burp Suite. So basically there are two different, professional and free version. In free version there are very limited number of and there are few very interesting features are not enabled in the free version. I'll share a professional version with you. You can download that later this class. I'll share everything. Okay. In that you can just download that Burp Suite and start using it. Okay. What Burp Suite does is, it will capture every request that is originating from your browser. The browser could be your Chrome, Firefox, IE, whatever it is, because we will be basically making our Burp Suite as a proxy server, and the data will be sent through proxy server to internet. And once it is receiving, it will come via proxy server. You can capture the response as well. You can observe the response carefully and forward it, and then it will come to your browser. Ideally, in current situation, what happens is, let's say I open google.com, it goes all the way to server and I get a response directly. But if I use a Burp Suite, the moment I enter google.com, it will not go to internet or my gateway or wherever it is. It will instead go to the Burp Suite. That's a proxy server I will be setting up in between my client and server, and I can basically forward, manipulate, edit, do scan, whatever I want to do, I can do on that particular Burp Suite. Okay, so let me go to Burp Suite. Burp Suite is basically a jar file. In order to run that, you guys just need to install a JDK on your machine. You just Google it, install Java on your machine, and once you install Java, you just need to double click on jar file. Okay, so in ideal scenario, that's when you have a pro version of Burp Suite. You'll just find one particular file. You just double click on it, you'll get an UI. But since we are using cracked version, you're going to load this burp loader. Once you open the burp loader, it will automatically load this jar file. Okay, you just need to accept it, and you'll get a beautiful UI of. Okay, this is how exactly the Burp Suite looks like. So there are various tabs. I'll explain you quickly what target does, what proxy does, what spider does, what scanner does, what intruder does, and what repeater does. Rest of things you can just learn. You can explore it later, or else in later classes I'll explain you when we use decoder, when do we use comparer, and when do we use different type of extenders and everything. Okay. So for now, let's keep it simple and straightforward. Yep. So now, as I told you earlier, we need to capture every single request. In order to capture it, we need to have basically a proxy server in between. The proxy server is basically Burp Suite in our case. So you need to listen your proxy or your browser to your proxy, and proxy will basically this is not really one thing. So you need to make sure that your Firefox or your browser is connecting to your Burp Suite properly, because if you do not implement a proper connection, or if you do not perform a proper configuration, then your browser will not be able to communicate to your Burp Suite or your proxy server, and the connection will be refused. Okay, so for that reason you will need to have an IP address. That's your basically local IP address, your loopback IP address it is called. So that's your own IP address. It is universal. It is same for every single machine. You need to provide your own IP address over here. Let me show you on browser first. Tools. I would highly recommend you to use Firefox 36.0 version, because many a times you will get an SSL error when you're loading an application on latest browser. But if you're loading an application on the older version of browser, that's basically 36.0, you will get sorry, not learn you'll get connection of almost all the applications. Okay, you need to go to options, tools, go to options, you'll be on general, just navigate to advanced, and advanced you need to navigate to network. Okay, in network, if you see here, configure how Firefox connects to internet. So in ideal scenario, it will directly connect to internet. That's basically using my gateway. But in my scenario, I don't want this particular Firefox to connect directly to internet. Instead, I want this to go through my Burp Suite. Okay. So for that reason, I need to provide my loopback IP address so that it connects to my own machine. So that's basically 127.0.0.1. There is a no proxy and manual proxy configuration. provide this particular IP address. There's a port address for that. See, IP address is just to figure out the proxy server. Yeah, it will now figure out that proxy server is here. But then, in order to transfer data between client and a server, that's basically a proxy server and a client, you need to have a certain port open. Yeah, so that particular certain port can be used to send or listen the data or basically transfer the data. Okay? So in this case, I'll be using some random port. So in my case, I'm using 8082. It's not necessary that you need to use 8082. You can use any other port, whichever you want. Provide this particular connection over here. By default, you will have use this proxy server for all protocols. Just check this particular option. Ideally, what happens is, let's say you're connecting on HTTP, then it is going to use this particular configuration. But if you have not checked this option, and if it is on SSL, then it will not use this particular configuration, and it will just bypass it. It will not even bypass it. It will not be able to make a connection. So for that reason, just click on use this proxy server for all protocols. Okay. Once you are done this particular once you are done this particular setting, you just need to remove this no proxy for option from here. That's basically no proxy for setting from here. So the proxy settings, that's basically IP address. You'll find a couple of IP address, something like localhost /127.0.0.1, something like this. Just remove everything from here. Okay. Because maybe after this I'll show you to set up your own test bench on your machine, so that you can just start intercepting the request of that and other applications as well. Okay, so this configuration is pretty straightforward. I'll take you through once again. Go to options, go to tools, options, in options go to network, go to settings, in settings go to manual proxy configuration, provide an IP address, that's basically your loopback IP address, and provide an IP port or support which you're going to utilize for listening, and use this proxy for all protocols, and just click on OK. Now the proxy on your Firefox is set, but you need to set a proxy on your burp as well. Okay, in your burp you need to go to a proxy tab. In proxy tab you need to navigate to options tab. Okay, in options tab you will either have something already configured, or you may not have anything configured over here. Click on add loopback only. That means it will automatically pick 127.0.0.1 because that's called loopback IP address, and provide the same port which you have provided in your Firefox. Okay, so just see if this particular tick is checked or not. Okay, if this particular tick is not checked, that means your browser is not able to, your burp suite is not able to configure on this port. Okay, then you may need to change to different port. So if once this particular tick is running and everything is perfect, sorry, this tick is checked and everything is perfect, so intercept. Now once you go to this particular tab, you will find different options over here. Intercept is on, off. If you click on off, if your intercept is off, all the data passing through your all the data passing through your burp suite will not be intercepted, will directly pass to the gateway, and directly the application will get loaded. But if you click on intercept is on, every request will be trapped in this particular burp suite until unless you forward it or you drop it. If you drop it, the request will be dropped. If you forward it, the request will be sent. And there are various actions like spidering, scanning, intruder, repeater. Okay, let's say I will.
Hi, Jan.
Yes, please go ahead.
Hello.
Yeah.
So can you please show us real quick the proxy setting on the Chrome or IE?
Oh yeah, sure.
How we set the.
Sure.
Thanks.
So for Chrome and IE, it will be pretty same. You just go over here in settings, search for proxy, change proxy settings. Okay. You need to go to this connections. You'll be landed on this particular tab directly. Go to LAN settings and just provide the same 127.0.0.1 and provide some other IP address as a port number, and just click on OK. That's it. Your proxy on IE or Chrome will be set, and provide the same port on your burp suite as well. Okay. Yeah. Is that okay?
Is there any certificate we need to download in the Chrome or
no. By default, it will ask you for whenever you load any HTTPS application, it will ask you if you want to trust this particular. I'll just show you quickly. You don't need to download any certificate. By default, the CA certificate issued by this burp suite, that's basically called Bose Figure. So whenever you load any HTTPS, by default it will add that certificate to your browser. Okay, so let's say, so in this case, if you see here, I am loading some website called aa.com and it is on SSL. You'll get this kind of page. Even on your Chrome, you just need to click on advanced and proceed. That's it. And in this case, add exception, I'm just going to add that particular certificate to my browser. Okay, so it is asking for again, click on add exception, and then you just need to do the same step again and again. Okay, then application will be loaded. It's basically redirecting to something different. So from AA it is redirected to American Airlines.ie or something. Yeah, that's the reason. There are multiple times it has asked. Okay, so that's the same thing you need to do on your Chrome as well. You just need to click on advanced and proceed. So yeah, no problem. For now, since we are not intercepting it, nothing was intercepted over here. But if you go through this HTTP history, every single request that is originated from your browser or received on your browser will be available in your HTTP history. Okay, you go to intercept, you click on intercept is on. Let's say I load this particular intercept, I load this particular page, I enter something like institute code, click on submit. Now if you see here, this is a basically get request. There are multiple parameters over here: get, name, and ID. That's what I have entered. 234234. Some data I have entered here. Now, while we are doing an assessment, I have 3 different entry points in the as a part of parameter. Now I can start injecting on this 3 parameters. And let's say I inject on this particular parameter. I inject something like single quote. Now click on forward, 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 and forward. So if there was a vulnerability, I would have got some kind of error. But then there are multiple requests that that were basically loaded after that. So you can test every single request by intercepting that particular page. Okay. If I click on edit, so there is some kind of dynamic parameter over here. So dynamic URL. So if I click on, if I enter single quote and forward it, I got some kind of error. So this comes very handy while you're doing an assessment. Any kind of web application assessment. So if you see here, there are multiple parameters over here. I can perform a cross-site scripting attack. I can perform a SQL injection. I can perform for insecure direct object references because there are some kind of database objects that comes in picture. I can perform some other kind of attacks, and I can just manipulate everything and click on forward. Okay, until unless I don't forward, this request will be over here and will be here. Okay, so if I click on forward, now if you see here, it is post request, and in post request there are multiple parameters over here again. Now repeater, this is the most important, and what I feel personally is repeater comes very handy in most of the assessment parts. Okay, why we use repeater is because if I click on this particular request forward, I am losing this particular request. Now I need to either go to my HTTP history, find that particular request, and then inject on that. But instead of that, what we do is generally, let's say I click on this edit, I click on submit. So there is a request saved. I want this particular request to be with me. Since I have to test for different parameters. I have to test for ID parameter, I have to test for OP parameter, I have to test for code, I have to test for INAME, I have to test for submit. And in order to do this, I need to load 4 times this particular page because there are 4 different parameters, and there are 10 different type of vulnerabilities I need to test. So it will be really difficult because I need to load every page again and again, inject everything, and understand the response. So instead of that, we will send it to repeater. Now repeater, the good thing about repeater is you send this particular request 1000 times, this request will stay here itself. Okay, you can just quickly inject everything. Let's say I inject for single quote on this, so I find a vulnerability. Yeah, there is some kind of SQL error over here. So I then inject some kind of cross-site scripting payload and see if I'm getting any cross-site scripting vulnerability. The script is accepted. So that means I can just quickly test for all different type of vulnerabilities. Don't worry about the vulnerability names. Just worry about the module names over here for now. Okay, because we will be discussing all in detail in coming classes. For now, I'm just, for example, I'm taking those names. Yeah. So you can just test for all different type of parameters, and all different parameters for different type of vulnerabilities. Okay, so that's a use of repeater. You can add as many tabs as you want. You just need to right click, send to repeater. Any request you want to test it thoroughly, just right click, send it to repeater. Okay, so that's the usage of repeater. Target is basically any application that is passing through your what do you say, burp suite will be added as a part of target, but out of this you want only specific applications to be tested thoroughly. Okay, so you can just add it to scope quickly. You can just right click and I mean it will basically add to scope add to scope by default, but this will really helpful when you're doing an active scan. Okay, for now it is doing a passive scan. So passive scan means it is not probing any entry points, it is just figuring out what kind of loopholes could be possible. Okay, but then if you want to do and scanning of every single port automatically, you can utilize the scanner part of this particular burp suite. But for now I would not highly recommend you to use that because we will be learning everything manually. But while you're doing assessment in real time, I would highly recommend you to do an assessment thoroughly, then send it to scanner, and then so that what happens is you're just double checking everything if anything you have not missed or not. Yeah, so if you just do an active scan, by default it will scan that particular URL and figure out different type of vulnerability. So it has found clickjacking. I don't think so anything we can do using clickjacking on this particular page. Then it will complete the scanning in next 15 sorry, not in 15, 5 minutes, 5 odd minutes. It will find for all the vulnerabilities and it will give you a result. Okay, most of the times, not most of the times, 50% of times you will find a false positive in the burp suite scan. So you need to manually verify again. The manual verification will be helpful when we are doing an assessment in real time. Okay, then there is a live scanning. All these things, just keep it as it is. Do not make any changes. So there's a scan queue. Whenever you send anything to your scanner, it will be added to scan queue and it will initiate a scan. Okay, so Spider, let's say you're doing an assessment of this particular application. Client just gives you this particular application to an assessment. He will not provide you how much the application is big and whatever it is. So it is your duty to now figure out all the pages of that particular application, because if you start crawling manually, if you go to every single page manually, there could be possibility that you might have missed 1 or 2 pages. So for that reason what we do is we try to spider the entire application. So if you just right click and send to spider, it will start spidering and it will figure out all the pages, all the possible pages, all the possible forms and everything on here. So if I just give you a submit form, it will crawl the entire application and it will take 15-20 minutes again, and you'll get a detailed result that let's say there are 200 pages. Out of this 10-15 are forms, 10-15 are dynamic URLs, 5 to 10 pages are static URLs, and some may not be understandable by burp suite, so it will just leave idle and everything. Entire list of URLs will be listed over here. Okay, so scanner, spider is pretty straightforward. Repeater I have explained. The target is something. Intruder is something very interesting. Okay, we use intruder in different scenarios. One is to do and perform a brute force. Other is to perform fuzzing. Okay, when we talk about fuzzing, there could be possibility that this particular parameter is vulnerable to cross-site scripting, but you're not really able to confirm whether there is a cross-site scripting or not by using 2 or 3 payloads which you know. So for that reason, you do an fuzzing on this particular parameter. You send thousands of payloads, see what payloads are basically acceptable by this. Okay, I'm really sorry. You send it to intruder. Basically, if you go to this intruder, there are 2 important tabs over here: positions and payloads. So in position tab, you're going to specify on which position you want to inject something. Okay, I'll show you 2 examples so that you'll get a clear idea. In this case, the position is selected properly because I want to inject on this particular page. Okay, so there are different type of attacks over here: sniper, pitchfork, cluster bomb. Cluster bomb is going to inject on all the positions you have selected. Sniper is going to inject on each and every what is a injection point you have entered. And then battering ram, pitchfork. So I would highly recommend you to go ahead with this sniper. Payloads you can add manually. Okay, you can just copy and paste here, or you can just add one after one, or else you can add from the list as well. Let's say you're doing an fuzzing of cross-site scripting. You just select cross-site scripting fuzzing tab, and you select, you get all the payloads which are by default available in your what do you say, in your burp suite, and click on start attack. So it will initiate, it will start injecting on this. So I'll show you. See, if I click on start, if you see here, this is a baseline request. That means this is a request without any modifications or without any injections. Okay. Now next is this particular request. Now if you see here, this is what has been injected over here, and you need to observe the response. So this will take some time for you if you guys are new to this. I'll explain you how to figure out response and cross-site scripting class and everything. So if you see here, all this will be injected over here, and I mean, we can just get an idea that yes, this particular payload was working perfectly by observing the response. So we search for quickly, is there anything like alert of something is in response or not. That means whatever I am injecting is reflecting in my response. Okay, so that's the usage of your what do you say, burp suite. So these are few basic things I want you to learn for now. I don't want you to, I mean, because we even have class tomorrow, so I'll make it pretty simple and straightforward for now. I'll just end here itself for burp suite. I'll share the burp suite, I'll share the burp suite tutorial as well, and I'll share a thorough detailed notes of burp suite. I have one ebook, I believe. I'll share an ebook for the nmap as well, and yeah, for the nessus as well, I'll share for everything. But yes, before closing, I want you guys to do something else as well. I want you to set up a test bench on your machine. Basically, test bench is nothing but there is a vulnerable application called bwap, buggy wap, which has a very decent number of vulnerabilities. So I'll be showing you everything on live, but sometimes what happens is, since I show on live, you guys try to find on live, but I mean, since it requires practice, so initially, in order to do in practice, you can quickly download this BWAP and start doing an assessment on this, and then you can jump onto live. Okay. For this, you need to install XAMPP on your machine. XAMPP. If you are using Linux as well, there is an XAMPP for Linux, and if you are using Mac, you'll find for Mac. If you're using Windows, you can just quickly install. Once you install, it is just next, nothing more than that. You'll get a control panel for XAMPP. Okay, you'll get a similar kind of control panel. Basically, you're going to launch an application server and you're going to launch a database server on your own machine. So when you enable this MySQL, that means you're basically starting a database service. And when you enable this Apache, that means you're basically starting a web application. Okay, so now you just need to go to your browser and search for 127.0.0.1. I have configured my web application web server on 8010. So I need to provide 8010. So this will, I mean, if you get this particular screen, that means you have perfectly installed your XAMPP. Okay. Next is you need to deploy an web application on your XAMPP. Okay. For that reason, what you do is quickly download bwap from here or from source code directly. Okay. You'll find a zip file. You can download from either of this. Just note down this particular URL and sorry. So this is on bwap. You'll find a zip. What you guys need to do is extract this zip file. Go to your C drive. In C drive, you'll find a XAMPP folder, XAMPP folder. Okay. After installation, you'll find this particular folder. Open this particular folder. In this particular folder, you will find a folder called htdocs. Remember this. htdocs. So I'm just providing it. In htdocs, just copy and paste that extracted folder. Okay. And if you want to change the name, you can change whatever you want. So open that particular folder. In that again, you will find one more bwap folder. Go to that bwap folder. In that, you will find an admin folder. Go to settings.php folder. In password, you will find bug by default. Okay. Remove that particular bug. Remove that particular bug password, because by default your XAMPP supports no username. Username as root and password as nothing. So for now, we are not providing any password. Just remove this particular password, and yeah, then you need to go to your browser. Go over here, provide bwap. You need to open another bwap folder. Go to this. And since you guys have not installed it, you need to browse to this particular location, install.php. Okay, click on this, you'll get a successful message. and then that's it for now. Okay, I'm sure that this is a lot of data for you guys. It's not so easy, but yes, I hope that you folks complete at least 15-20% of this, and let's meet tomorrow. Tomorrow I'll keep it simple. I'll not push so much, because we even have I'm targeting to complete in 8 classes. That's somewhere around 4 weekends. Okay, so don't worry much. I'll not force so much of data. I hope that you guys have followed me, and yeah, if you have any kind of doubt, just let me know now.
Basically, you want us to install and set it up everything for VWAP, and tomorrow we will go through it.
Yes. Tomorrow, as in on we progress. If there is any vulnerability, first I may show you on BWAP, and then I may take you on live, so you can practice on BWAP. So that's the reason I want to make sure that you have everything on your machine ready. Yeah.
Yeah, and like you showed on intruder in burp suite, and inserted the payload, burp suite payload for from the sniper for XSS or other things. So basically, the 200 OK status for the all those requests that went to the server. That means they were successfully sent and received by the server.
Yeah. So in that case, see, in fuzzing case, there are two different cases. Okay, let me take you to that again. Okay. In let's say I have this username and password field. Okay. Let me set I closed my browser. Sorry. So let's say I enter username, some password. I don't know what exactly it is. I send it to repeater. Okay. So in this case, I'm trying to sorry, not repeater. I'll send it to intruder. I'm doing a brute force for this. Okay. Now my positions in this brute force will be that I know username. I don't know password. I need to figure out password. I'll keep this particular password as it is. Now in payloads, I'll provide some random password, some 15-20 password, and out of that, I'll provide one single password out of this. Okay, okay. So there is a basic SQL injection, something like this. Now I start an attack. So there are around 16 counts of payloads. After 16 counts, if you observe this particular thing carefully, while you're using intruder, you need to keep two things in mind. One is you need to see the odd status of all or odd length of all. That is while you're doing in brute force. But while you're doing in fuzzing, it is not necessary that you need to keep the status and length in mind. The reason is because, let's say I have done a brute force of cross-site scripting. Okay, I've done a brute force of cross-site scripting payloads. Now in this case, it is important to what you say, understand the response, not the length and source, because the cross-site scripting is the cross-site scripting payload was injected in password field. In response, see if that particular password is actually getting if this particular payload is actually getting executed or not. So in this case, you need to thoroughly understand the response. Okay, there's nothing to do with the status and there's nothing to do with the length. Sometimes yes, length comes in picture whenever, let's say, you have 10 different payloads, and after out of that only one payload got executed, and that's a big payload, so length may be different for that. The rest of them may be pretty different payload. Okay, so length status is something which comes scenario to scenario. In one scenario we have done in brute force, so in that scenario it was really helpful for us because we were able to figure out the password, which was successful, because if you see here, all the until here the length was same for all the requests, 2925, but only the successful request, the length was different. But when we see the cross-site scripting fuzzing, there is nothing to do with the length, because sometimes the payload could be successfully executing, still there could be a 302. The payload could be successfully executing, still the length could be same. So you need to analyze response manually. Okay.
Yeah, so I guess that was my point. How, after reviewing the response, how do I say that this was successful without looking at the in the browser?
Yeah, that I'll show you in class. I mean, in cross-site scripting, just to analyze this response code quickly, how to figure out whether there was a cross-site scripting or not. I can show you that easily. Yeah, not a big deal. I mean, that's basically part of a class. So I'll show you how to read the code and understand if there is any cross-site, if the cross-site scripting payload was successful or not. Okay.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. So that was a long class for me, and I am sure I have not bored you guys, right?
It was pretty good.
Yeah, hope same with everyone. So if you guys have any kind of doubt, don't hesitate. You can drop a message in the group, or you guys have my WhatsApp number. You can directly call me on my WhatsApp number. I'll share my Ireland number as well. You can directly call on that number. Yeah. If you have any kind of doubt, I'll try to help you as much as possible.
So what is the version number for the Firefox you recommended? So 36.0?
Yeah, 36.0 is something which I would recommend you to use because I mean there are SSL problems that always comes in picture. Yeah, 36.0 will help.
So 36.0 is good.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean.
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Any other questions, doubts, anything? Okay then. So tomorrow you guys are okay with 2:30 to 5:30, same time again?
Yes, I'm okay.
Yeah, me too.
Okay, perfect. Let's meet exactly at same time then. Tomorrow I'll not, I mean, since today was my first class, I wanted to make sure that I complete almost all the network security and basics of web app. So I have done that. From tomorrow, I'll not force you this much of information on you guys. I'll make sure that I only take 2 to 3 different vulnerabilities on a day so that you get enough time to practice the entire week, and then, I mean, 2 days. So that means almost 3, 4 vulnerabilities in 2 weekend days, so that you get a decent enough time to practice, so that in next coming 3 to 4 weekends we will cover almost all the AppSec. Then we will be only left with mobile AppSec, mobile application security, and Kali Linux, which can be covered in one. Yeah. Is that okay with you guys, or do you think that I need to speed up so I can? I mean, if you want to speed up, if you want me to speed up, I can do it in one day as well. Don't worry. Yeah, go ahead, Frank.
Oh, I guess this is good.
Okay, perfect. Frank, please go ahead. You had a question, right?
Did you send the recorded video today or?
No, I'll be sending you after
waiting
this.
weekend?
I'll be sending you after this. Yeah, after in short time.
Sure. In the email, right?
Yeah, I'll be sending you. I'll be uploading in my Google Drive. You can just view that video over there. Yeah.
All right. Thanks.
No problem.
Sure.
Okay. Yep. Is there any other questions? You can drop me a message, and I hope you guys have followed the class. And if you think that I'm going too fast, or if you think that I'm going too slow, give me a feedback then and there itself. I'll try to make sure that I go in such a way. Okay. Thank you. Thanks a lot for joining. Yeah. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye, folks. Bye.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thanks. Bye.